The wind moves across the desert like an ancient breath, soft at first, then rising into a whisper that carries through time. It is the summer of 1799, and Egypt burns under a sun that has seen every empire come and go. Along the western edge of the Nile Delta, near a crumbling fort called Julian, a group of French soldiers dig trenches in the sand. They are young, tired, and far from home, part of Napoleon Bonaparte's ambitious Egyptian campaign. A campaign meant not only to conquer, but to enlighten, to drag the secrets of the ancient world into the light of modern reason. Their shovels strike against dry earth, clinking through rock and bone. And then, with a sound that will echo through centuries, one soldier's tool hits something solid. Not the usual limestone, but smoother, darker, impossibly deliberate. Pierre-François Bouchard wipes the sweat from his brow and kneels. Beneath layers of dust, a black slab begins to appear, heavy, rectangular, its surface carved with lines of strange symbols. He calls the others over. Together, they lift it out from its tomb of dirt, their faces shadowed in awe and confusion. The stone is broken at the top, jagged like a wound, but its weight carries the quiet authority of something that once mattered, deeply, cosmically. The men squint in the harsh light. There are 3 bands of writing. The bottom one they recognize at once, Greek, the language of scholars. But above it lie 2 more unknown scripts. One a swift, flowing hand, and the other a complex array of birds, eyes, serpents, and suns. The officer runs his fingers along the carved lines. "What do you think it means?" someone asks. No one answers. They cannot know that this stone, pulled by accident from the desert floor, will become the single most important archaeological find in human history. They cannot imagine that these marks, these forgotten shapes, will one day give voice to a civilization buried under 4,000 years of silence. For millennia, Egypt has been a mystery. Travelers from Greece, Rome, and beyond came to gaze upon the colossal statues, the towering temples, the vast, painted tombs. They saw the hieroglyphs, countless inscriptions covering walls and obelisks, and they wondered what stories they told. Were they magic? Were they codes? No one knew. The language of the pharaohs had died centuries ago, its last speakers gone, its sacred script reduced to ornamental symbols. Even Egyptian priests under Roman rule had forgotten how to read the words of their ancestors. The gods had gone silent, and their voices turned to stone. Yet here, in Bouchard's hands, was a possible key, a trilingual message preserved by chance. The Greek text could be read. It spoke of kings, decrees, temples, and offerings. If the other 2 scripts said the same thing, then perhaps, just perhaps, one could be used to unlock the others. But that realization, that connection between languages, was still decades away. For now, the French soldiers only knew they had found something ancient and inexplicable. They carried the slab back to camp, where it drew the attention of the scholars traveling with Napoleon's army, the savants, men of science, art, and philosophy who were tasked with documenting Egypt's wonders. They examined the stone under lamplight, tracing every groove, copying every symbol. One of them murmured, almost reverently, "It's a message from the ancients." Another added, "No, it's a code." And a third whispered, "It's a voice." They decided to name it after the nearby town of Rashid, which the French called Rosette, the Rosetta Stone. Word spread quickly among the expedition. Napoleon himself, though preoccupied with his military ambitions, was told about the find. "A key to Egypt," his scholar said. The general nodded, perhaps only half understanding. For him, Egypt was a stage on which he hoped to become immortal. For the world, however, this moment marked the rebirth of an empire's memory. When night fell, Bouchard returned to the excavation site alone. The moonlight glimmered off the sand. He thought of the countless generations that had walked these same paths. Pharaohs, priests, slaves, merchants, conquerors, all gone, their voices erased. And now this stone, heavy and unyielding, had spoken again. He crouched beside the empty pit, running his hand through the sand. The desert around him was utterly still. Yet somehow it felt alive, as though something ancient had been disturbed, awakened. A century before, scholars had tried to read hieroglyphs using wild theories. Some believed each symbol represented entire words. Others claimed they were purely mystical. None had succeeded. The stone in the French soldiers' campfire glow would eventually shatter that confusion, but only through decades of obsession, rivalry, and genius. It would reveal how the Egyptians recorded not just their gods and rulers, but their laws, poetry, and daily lives. The Rosetta Stone would turn myth into memory. And yet, that night in 1799, it was just an enigma in the sand. A broken piece of basalt inscribed by hands long turned to dust. Bouchard couldn't have known that the moment his shovel struck stone. He had bridged the distance between the ancient and the modern worlds. The desert wind picked up again, carrying with it the scent of salt and thyme. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Nile moved silently toward the sea, its waters still feeding the same soil that once gave birth to gods. The stars above looked down, unblinking, as they had on the pyramids, on Thebes, on the mummified kings who believed they would live forever. The soldier took one last look at the stone before covering it with a tarp, unaware that beneath that simple gesture lay the weight of history itself. In centuries to come, millions would stand before that very slab, in museums, in photographs, in dreams, tracing with their eyes the same mysterious lines those soldiers saw by firelight. They would see in it not just a relic, but a revelation. That language is immortality, and that even when empires die, their words can wait, patient as the desert, until someone comes along and listens. The Rosetta Stone did not whisper. It waited, and when it was found, the world began to remember. The Mediterranean sun bakes the streets of Alexandria in 1798, and Napoleon Bonaparte, general of France, steps from his ship onto the shores of a land both ancient and untamed. His eyes scan the horizon, the dunes merging into the shimmering Nile Delta, and for a fleeting moment, he sees more than a military objective. He sees immortality. For Napoleon, Egypt is not merely a conquest. It is a stage upon which he intends to cast himself into the annals of eternity, not as a soldier, but as a liberator of knowledge. To him, the pyramids are not monuments to dead kings. They are beacons, pointing to the forgotten truths of a civilization that predates Europe itself. He has brought not only an army but a cohort of scholars, mathematicians, naturalists, engineers, linguists, and artists, men whose obsession with discovery rivals his own obsession with power. They carry tools to measure, to record, to document, and, most importantly, to uncover what the sands of Egypt have hidden for millennia. They will map the terrain, sketch the temples, translate the laws, and, in doing so, create the first systematic study of a civilization that time had nearly erased. For Napoleon, the conquest of Egypt is as much a battle of intellect as of armies. It is a war to possess the past as well as the present. The streets are alive with the unfamiliar. Camels and traders, merchants and priests, the scent of spices mingling with the dust of the desert. Napoleon moves among them like a man possessed, dictating orders with a precision that is both magnetic and terrifying. His generals follow, but the scholars trail behind him, carrying sketchbooks and instruments, their eyes wide with awe at temples that stretch toward the sky, columns carved with gods and kings, and inscriptions that speak in a language no living soul can read. Here, Napoleon sees a world waiting to be catalogued, classified, and claimed not only for France but for himself. In the evenings, as the army camps under the stars, Napoleon walks alone along the Nile's edge, contemplating the monuments. He pauses at the ruins of ancient temples, the massive stones casting long shadows in the moonlight. He runs his fingers across a carved relief, imagining the hands that once traced the same lines. What were they trying to say? What power did they hold? In these quiet moments, he is not a general. He is a man obsessed with the eternal, trying to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Egypt, he believes, will make him immortal. The campaign itself is brutal. The French troops face an unfamiliar land, diseases, and a resilient local population. Battles are fought with cannons and muskets, yet Napoleon's vision always extends beyond the immediate fight. He orders excavations at ancient ruins, directs the collection of manuscripts, and instructs the artists to capture everything, the statues, the hieroglyphs, the temples. He understands that power is not only in victory but in knowledge. Every artifact brought back, every sketch made, every measurement recorded, is another thread in the tapestry he hopes will bind him to history. It is during this fervent search that a small, dark stone will emerge from the sands, the very object that will redefine Egyptology. But at the time of its discovery, the soldiers and scholars are unaware of its importance. To Napoleon, it is yet another piece of the vast puzzle he hopes to assemble, a fragment of a civilization that could grant Europe and himself dominion not just over land, but over the imagination of the world. Napoleon's fascination with Egypt is not solely intellectual. He cultivates a narrative of himself as a modern pharaoh, a ruler capable of bridging the gap between two worlds. He surrounds himself with Egyptian antiquities and draws connections between his victories and the ancient kings whose tombs lie hidden beneath the sand. His ambition is personal and profound. He does not merely wish to conquer. He wishes to be remembered. He believes that by uncovering Egypt's secrets, he can rewrite the very understanding of civilization, placing himself at its center. Yet the campaign is not only about glory. It is also a gamble with destiny. The French army faces threats from the British Navy, the harsh desert, and political intrigue within its own ranks. Napoleon's strategy is brilliant but risky, relying on speed, precision, and the loyalty of men who are as much strangers to the desert as they are to its culture. Every decision carries the weight of history. A single mistake could obliterate both his army and the dream of leaving an indelible mark upon the world. Amid the marches and battles, the scholars uncover wonders that defy comprehension. Temples dedicated to Ra, Osiris, and Isis reveal intricate reliefs. Statues depict pharaohs with a realism that seems almost alive, and hieroglyphs cover walls with patterns that hint at secrets long buried. To Napoleon, these are not merely curiosities. They are evidence that knowledge can be seized and controlled. If the ancients left messages in stone, then understanding those messages is equivalent to seizing the power that once belonged to gods and kings. There is a tension, too, between the march of the army and the labor of discovery. Soldiers grumble at the weight of the artifacts and the delays caused by scholarly expeditions. Yet Napoleon insists that every fragment of history must be preserved. He commands respect through charisma and authority, blending fear with fascination. His obsession with the past mirrors his military precision. Every action calculated, every outcome anticipated. Egypt becomes his proving ground, a theater in which intellect and ambition intersect with the dust and blood of conquest. By the time the Rosetta Stone is uncovered, Napoleon's vision of Egypt has already begun to take shape. His dream is no longer just territorial, it is cultural and historical. He imagines France as the inheritor of Egyptian knowledge, the civilization that once bridged the human and divine now speaking again through French scholarship. The stone itself, still buried and unknown to the world, will become the ultimate testament to this dream. It will transform the landscape of history, allowing voices silenced for millennia to speak once more. Napoleon will not live to see the full impact of the Rosetta Stone. His empire will fall, his ambitions crumble, and his army scattered. Yet in those months of marching along the Nile, issuing orders, sketching ruins, and dreaming of eternity, he sets into motion a chain of events that will resonate through centuries. His Egyptian campaign, conceived as conquest, becomes discovery. His obsession with immortality becomes humanity's chance to reclaim the past. The desert stretches endlessly, indifferent to human ambition. Yet under the sun, among the winds and sands, Napoleon's dream casts a long shadow. It is a shadow that reaches the hands of soldiers, scholars, and eventually the world. A stone lies buried, waiting for the right eyes to see it, for the right minds to understand it, for the right moment in history to give it voice. And when that moment comes, the world will remember not just Egypt, not just the pharaohs, but the man who dreamed of touching eternity by stepping onto a foreign shore and believing he could hold history in his hands. The wind howled across the rocky outcrop of Fort Julian, tugging at the tents and stirring clouds of dust that clung to the faces of French soldiers. It was June of 1799, and the soldiers, weary from months of marching and skirmishes along the Nile, were digging defensive positions to fortify the small coastal stronghold. The fort itself was a crumbling relic of earlier centuries, battered by both sea and sand, its walls a patchwork of stone that had survived countless generations. Among the men was Pierre-François Bouchard, an engineer by training, who directed the excavation with a precision born of both duty and curiosity. His shovels cut into the soil methodically, the rhythm broken only by the occasional metallic clang as spades struck stone. And then, beneath the layer of ochre dirt and fragmented rock, a sound different from any before echoed sharply, the unmistakable ring of metal striking something denser than limestone. Bouchard knelt, brushing away the sand, and uncovered a slab unlike any he had seen. It was black, polished and rectangular, its edges chipped but its surface commanding in its presence. The first rays of sunlight reflected off the dark stone, and for a moment, it seemed as if the desert itself paused to watch. Carvings etched deep into the basalt revealed 3 distinct scripts. The topmost was a familiar series of intricate symbols: birds, snakes, suns, and abstract shapes. Beneath it flowed a different, cursive pattern of marks, almost hieratic but unfamiliar. The lowest band, however, was Greek, precise and recognizable, letters arranged neatly in rows. Bouchard's heartbeat quickened. He called over his colleagues, and together they lifted the heavy stone from the sand. It was heavier than any could have imagined, a weight that seemed symbolic, as if the past itself were pressing down, insisting on recognition. Soldiers gathered around, curious and cautious. They did not yet understand that this unassuming slab would one day unlock the voice of a civilization thought forever silenced. The scholars attached to Napoleon's expedition were summoned immediately. These men were not warriors. They were seekers, scribes of knowledge who dreamed of understanding the world in its entirety. When they saw the stone, a hush fell over the camp. The inscriptions were copied painstakingly by candlelight, sketches made with trembling hands. Some argued it was a religious artifact, others speculated it was a legal decree. No one could yet read the mysterious scripts, and yet they all felt the magnitude of what lay before them, an object that had survived centuries, perhaps millennia, and remained almost perfectly preserved. Among the onlookers, whispers spread quickly. "It is a message from the ancients," said one. "No, it is a code," countered another. "It speaks," a third murmured reverently. And in that moment, none of them could have guessed how accurate that last statement would prove to be. This stone was more than a message. It was a bridge, a connection between the past and the present, a key that would allow modern humans to understand words that had been locked away for generations. The Greek inscription offered the first clues. It described a decree, issued in the name of Ptolemy V, outlining tax exemptions, temple donations, and civic regulations. For scholars familiar with Greek, it was legible, and it suggested that the other 2 inscriptions conveyed the same content. But the scripts above were unknown. They were as alien as the desert horizon, flowing and symbolic, alive yet indecipherable. Scholars realized that if these could somehow be matched to the Greek text, a window into ancient Egyptian thought might finally open. The French soldiers, meanwhile, felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. They had come to conquer, to dominate, yet here was an artifact that demanded respect. The weight of its history pressed down on them more heavily than the midday sun. One soldier, brushing sand from his uniform, whispered to a companion, "This is not a stone, it is a voice." Another, more superstitious, suggested it might be cursed, left by the pharaohs to punish intruders. The desert, vast and indifferent, seemed to agree, its wind carrying the sound of invisible echoes across the dunes. Bouchard oversaw the transportation of the stone back to the camp. It was no small task. The slab's immense weight required ropes, levers, and the coordinated effort of men who had spent months in the unforgiving sun. Yet as they moved it, something about the stone felt different. It seemed to resist hurried handling, demanding patience and care. Every scrape of the rope against stone sounded like a muted reminder. Some things are not meant to be seized lightly. At the camp, The stone was placed on a raised platform for examination. The scholars worked through the day and into the night, copying, measuring, and debating. Each glyph and mark was traced meticulously. The cursive script in the middle, later identified as demotic, posed challenges unlike the Greek, which was instantly intelligible to educated Europeans. Yet the scholars persisted, driven by a shared sense of awe and urgency. They could feel that they were touching something extraordinary, a relic that had survived wars, revolutions, and centuries of neglect. It was not merely an artifact. It was a revelation waiting to happen. Napoleon himself visited the site intermittently. He inspected the stone, running his fingers along the carved lines, his mind calculating its value not only as a historical artifact but as a tool of prestige. To him, the conquest of Egypt was inseparable from the collection of knowledge. Every discovery reinforced the narrative of French Enlightenment and intellectual superiority. Yet, even for him, the full importance of the stone was not yet apparent. Its true power, the ability to unlock a dead language, would remain hidden until decades later. That evening, under a desert sky thick with stars, the stone sat silently in the camp. Men gathered around lanterns, debating theories, drinking wine, and speculating. Some suggested it might contain magic. Others argued it was a diplomatic document of little consequence. Yet all sensed the gravity of the moment. Here lay a relic untouched by human memory for centuries, a witness to the reign of kings long gone, its surface etched with words that once shaped laws, inspired prayers, and dictated the lives of thousands. In retrospect, it was a discovery that could not have been more perfectly timed. The political and intellectual climate of Europe was ripe for decipherment. Scholars hungry for knowledge, empires eager to claim cultural authority, and the slow, relentless march of historical inquiry were all converging on this small slab of basalt. The Rosetta Stone, as it would soon be called, had emerged not merely from the earth but from the currents of destiny, waiting for the right minds and the right moment to reveal its secrets. And so, beneath the pale moonlight, the Rosetta Stone rested in Fort Julian, unassuming yet monumental. The sands of Egypt whispered around it, carrying the weight of centuries, the secrets of temples, tombs, and palaces. It had survived dynasties, foreign invasions, and the slow erasure of its language. Now it had surfaced, seemingly by accident, and the world would never be the same. It had waited 2,000 years to speak, and though the voice would not be understood immediately, it had begun its journey into human consciousness, a journey that would transform the understanding of civilization itself. Long before the Rosetta Stone emerged from the sands, before Napoleon's armies marched across the Nile Delta, the language of the pharaohs reigned supreme in the temples, tombs, and monuments of Egypt. Hieroglyphs, the intricate, elegant symbols carved into walls and painted on papyrus, were not merely letters or words. They were divine, sacred, and alive. Each bird, each eye, each coiled serpent was more than a sign. It was a vessel of meaning, a bridge between the mortal and the eternal, a whisper of God speaking through human hands. In this language, the act of writing was a sacred ritual, reserved for priests, scribes, and the ruling elite. To inscribe a name was to claim its power. To carve a prayer was to invoke the gods themselves. Hieroglyphs covered every surface of ancient temples, from the great pillars of Karnak to the soaring walls of Luxor. The symbols told stories, not only of kings and battles but of the eternal cycles of life and death. Gods walked among humans in these depictions. Ra sailed across the sky, Osiris ruled the underworld, and Isis wept for the living and the dead alike. Each hieroglyph was a window into a worldview where the material and the divine were inseparable. To read the script was to understand not just history but the very essence of Egyptian belief. Yet the language of the gods was never meant for the common eye. Ordinary Egyptians, farmers, craftsmen, or merchants rarely learned to read hieroglyphs. They might witness the symbols on temple walls or see them on monuments in the town square, but comprehension was restricted. Knowledge of the script was a form of power, a privilege, a divine inheritance. Priests guarded it jealously, understanding that words could shape reality. A correctly inscribed spell could protect the dead on their journey to the afterlife, An error could invoke calamity. Language, in Egypt, was not a tool for communication alone. It was a force, a talisman, a conduit to eternity. Over centuries, hieroglyphs evolved into cursive forms such as hieratic and later, demotic. These scripts were faster, more practical, used for administrative and legal purposes rather than ritual or monumental inscriptions. Yet the sacred script retained its authority. Kings would still commission monuments in full hieroglyphs, and temples continued to be adorned with symbols meant to outlast their creators. Hieroglyphs were deliberately eternal, etched in stone to endure millennia, to defy time and mortality itself. And yet, as history unfolded, the language slowly faded. The conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great brought Hellenistic influence, while the Ptolemaic dynasty attempted to merge Greek and Egyptian traditions. Temples still spoke in hieroglyphs, but Greek became the language of administration, law, and trade. Gradually, even the priests, those guardians of sacred knowledge, lost fluency. By the Roman period, hieroglyphs were largely undecipherable. The voice of the gods was silent. Temples that had once echoed with prayers were now reduced to symbols whose meaning was a mystery. What had been alive in stone and papyrus became decoration, patterns with no accessible meaning. The language that once commanded awe and respect became a puzzle centuries later, a script that seemed almost magical in its incomprehensibility. Imagine walking into a temple in Thebes around 300 AD. The pillars rise high, adorned with hieroglyphs depicting gods, kings, and the cycles of the Nile. A priest approaches, attempting to recite a sacred hymn. The symbols carved on the wall, once perfectly legible to him, now evoke only a faint sense of ritual. Their original power is gone. The sounds of the words are no longer remembered. The temple is magnificent, yet the knowledge that once animated it has been lost. Centuries later, explorers and soldiers would wander those same ruins, seeing the same hieroglyphs, unaware that these marks are a code left by a civilization that thought it had tamed eternity. This was the world into which the Rosetta Stone would eventually emerge. When Bouchard unearthed the slab at Fort Julian, the inscriptions above the Greek text were the very remnants of this sacred, forgotten tongue. They were hieroglyphs, yes, but they were more than mere pictures. Each symbol carried multiple layers of meaning, phonetic sounds, symbolic ideas, and religious significance all intertwined. To a modern observer, they are intricate carvings. To an ancient priest, they were utterances that connected the mortal with the divine. Deciphering them was not simply an academic exercise. It was an act that would revive the very voices of the past. And yet, understanding these symbols was not straightforward. Unlike Greek or Latin, hieroglyphs do not follow simple alphabetical rules. A single bird could represent a sound, an idea, or a full word depending on context. A sun disk might indicate a deity, a day, or the divine essence itself. Complexity was built into the system deliberately. Hieroglyphs demanded interpretation, meditation, and understanding of the cultural and religious framework in which they were written. To read them correctly, one had to think like an Egyptian priest of antiquity, to hear not just the letters but the music of the world they described. When scholars eventually approached the Rosetta Stone, they realized the magnitude of the challenge. Here, in the carvings above the Greek decree, lay an entire civilization's memory, trapped for centuries. The stone was not simply a translation tool. It was a time machine. To decode it required genius, obsession, and an almost mystical connection to the past. It was not enough to see shapes and letters. One had to see the life, the ritual, and the soul of the people who had inscribed them. The stone would demand every ounce of intellect and intuition, and even then, the journey to understanding would be long and arduous. Hieroglyphs, the language of the gods, were finally about to speak again. But the voices they carried were layered, profound, and full of emotion. A mixture of awe, devotion, fear, and ambition. They reminded humanity that language is more than communication. It is preservation, identity, and memory. Through these symbols, a civilization that had vanished from the earth would leave a testament, a gift, and a challenge. It was a code waiting for the right minds to listen, a song waiting for someone to hear. And so, the world stood on the threshold of rediscovery. The Rosetta Stone lay in sand, waiting for scholars, rivalries, and brilliance to awaken its message. The language of the gods, silent for nearly 2,000 years, was poised to return, to speak across time, across empires, across the vast gulf of human forgetfulness. And when it finally did, it would transform everything the world thought it knew about Egypt, about language, and about the immortality of words. The Rosetta Stone, once hidden beneath layers of desert soil, had become a prize far greater than any battlefield victory. Its value was not in gold, not in land, but in knowledge, the power to unlock a civilization that had been silent for centuries. In 1799, Napoleon's army still occupied parts of Egypt, but the tides of war were shifting. The French campaign had been daring, brilliant, and exhausting. Disease, heat, and constant skirmishes had thinned their ranks, while the British fleet loomed in the Mediterranean, waiting to strike. The stone, unearthed near Fort Julian, became more than an archaeological find. It became a symbol of intellectual dominance, a trophy in the shadowy war of empires. When news of the discovery reached London and Paris, scholars and politicians alike understood the significance. France had found a relic that could grant unparalleled insight into Egypt's lost past. The British, meanwhile, were determined not to let such a treasure fall permanently into French hands. The stakes were not merely national pride. They were control over knowledge itself. Whoever possessed the Rosetta Stone would gain authority over the secrets of a civilization whose mysteries had eluded mankind for millennia. After Napoleon's defeat in Egypt, the French army capitulated. The British assumed control, and with that, the stone was seized. Its removal was not gentle. The heavy basalt slab, its surface etched with sacred symbols and Greek decree, had to be carefully transported hundreds of miles to Alexandria and then shipped across the Mediterranean. Soldiers and officials argued over logistics, the stone's weight, and its rightful ownership. Was it France's prize, or a spoil of war claimed by Britain? The debate raged even as the stone's surface gleamed in the North African sun, its hieroglyphs waiting for someone to listen. The British recognized the Rosetta Stone as a treasure beyond measure. They understood that its value transcended military conquest. It was a key to history, to prestige, and to national pride. By taking it to England, they ensured that the stone would become part of the British Museum's collection, a symbol of imperial reach and scholarly ambition. The journey was arduous. Ships laden with cannons, supplies, and captured artifacts navigated stormy seas. The stone, encased in crates, survived the passage intact, its inscriptions untouched but no less mysterious. Every gust of wind on the deck seemed to whisper the stories of long-dead kings, of priests who had carved their prayers into its surface, of a language that had slept for centuries. Once in London, the Rosetta Stone became a spectacle. Crowds flocked to the museum, staring at the dark basalt slab, tracing its 3 scripts with awe and bewilderment. Scholars examined it obsessively, recording every line, every mark, every anomaly. Some believed the stone could contain magical power. Others saw it as a challenge, a puzzle meant to test the intellect of the age. But no one, not yet, could read it fully. Greek offered a partial understanding, a glimpse into the decree, but the demotic and hieroglyphic texts remained locked, their meaning hidden behind centuries of silence. Meanwhile, in France, disappointment and frustration festered. Scholars who had accompanied Napoleon felt robbed, their opportunity for discovery stolen by war and politics. Letters flew across the channel, accusations and debates exchanged with a feverish intensity. Some argued that Britain had no right to retain what was discovered on Egyptian soil. Others claimed that scholarly advancement should transcend national boundaries. Yet amidst this dispute, one thing was clear. The Rosetta Stone had become the most coveted object in the intellectual world. Its presence could elevate a scholar to fame, grant a nation prestige, and shift the balance of cultural authority. The stone also exposed the human drama behind the pursuit of knowledge. Rivalries formed, tempers flared, and alliances shifted. Men who had once worked side by side now competed for recognition. Who would be credited with deciphering its inscriptions? Who would claim the glory when the ancient language finally spoke again? These questions fueled obsession and resentment in equal measure. The stone was more than an artifact. It was a crucible, testing not only intellect but character. As the British prepared to display the stone, there was a sense of theatricality, almost as if they recognized the historical magnitude of what they held. The museum became a stage, the stone the actor, and the visitors, scholars, nobles, curious citizens, the audience. Its inscriptions, though unreadable, commanded respect. People felt the weight of centuries pressing through the basalt, the hushed voices of priests and scribes whispering across the ages. Every glance was a silent acknowledgement. Here was a bridge to the past, a challenge that might never be fully met. The transport and possession of the Rosetta Stone also highlighted the fragility of knowledge. The stone's journey was perilous, and at any point, storms, accidents, or human error could have ended its story. Yet it survived, preserved by chance and care, until it rested in London, poised to ignite a revolution in understanding. Its inscriptions, etched in silence, waited for the genius capable of listening, for the eyes that could decipher meaning, for the mind that could connect three languages to reveal the voice of a civilization. The British triumph, however, was not without tension. Negotiations with France lingered in the background, each side claiming legitimacy. Scholars from both nations debated publicly and privately, exchanging ideas, critiques, and sometimes insults. The battle for the stone was as much intellectual as it was political. It was a reminder that knowledge, like territory, could be contested, fought over, and coveted. And the stakes could not have been higher. The Rosetta Stone was more than a relic. It was a potential key to rewriting history, to understanding a world that had been silent for centuries. Even as the stone was displayed in the British Museum, its story was incomplete. Visitors admired it, sketched it, speculated about it, yet few understood its true significance. It sat there quietly, imposing and inscrutable, a silent witness to empires, rivalries, and the relentless human drive to uncover truth. The Egyptians who had originally commissioned the decree could not have imagined that their words would one day be transported across the sea, studied by foreign eyes, and debated by men who had never walked their streets. And yet, in this displacement, the stone gained a new form of immortality, a presence that transcended borders and centuries. In this clash of armies, nations, and intellects, the Rosetta Stone emerged as a symbol of both human ambition and human fragility. It illustrated that knowledge could be a prize as fiercely contested as land or gold, that the pursuit of understanding was inseparable from rivalry and obsession. And it reminded the world that history does not merely survive through books or monuments, but through those moments of discovery, transport, and preservation. Moments where fate, ambition, and chance converge. By the time the stone settled permanently in London, it had already traversed continents, witnessed conflict, and sparked passions on both sides of the channel. It would now wait for decades until the next phase of its story unfolded, the painstaking decoding that would resurrect the voices of ancient Egypt and forever change the way humanity understands its past. But in that moment, the battle for possession had ended, and the Rosetta Stone sat silently, imposing and enigmatic, its secrets intact, as if daring the world to uncover them. The Rosetta Stone had crossed deserts, wars, and oceans, and now it lay in the heart of London, far from the sun-baked sands of Egypt where it had been born. Encased in the British Museum, it was displayed for the world to see, yet its power remained untapped. Crowds gathered daily, peering at the dark basalt slab, tracing the 3 bands of inscriptions with awe and curiosity. Greek was recognizable, providing a mere hint of meaning. The demotic and the hieroglyphs above, however, were a mystery, opaque as the night sky. Scholars debated endlessly, sketching, measuring, and theorizing. They marveled at the artistry, the precision, and the sheer audacity of the ancient Egyptians who had composed a message so layered, so deliberate, that it could outlast centuries of human forgetfulness. The stone's presence in London became a magnet for intellects, a focal point for minds hungry to glimpse into the past. Yet, alongside fascination lay a subtle tension. Many questioned the ethics of its possession. It had been unearthed in Egypt, carried off amidst war, and now served as a symbol of imperial power. Some argued that it belonged to humanity as a whole. Others insisted it was rightful property of Britain. In its silence, the stone embodied these conflicting claims, a witness to the complexities of colonialism, conquest, and the human desire to own history. Within the museum, the Rosetta Stone commanded attention. Scholars, both amateur and professional, would spend hours at its base, eyes straining to detect patterns in the hieroglyphs, gestures, and symbols. They sketched furiously, compared notes, and attempted rudimentary translations. Some were convinced the inscriptions were purely symbolic, mystical in nature, perhaps even magical. Others believed they were phonetic, a system that encoded sounds, syllables, and names. Yet all agreed that the stone contained a treasure of knowledge, a secret that had survived millennia in stone, waiting for the intellect capable of unlocking it. Visitors from all walks of life were drawn to its imposing presence. Aristocrats dressed in silk and lace whispered theories, while young students pressed their faces close to the slab, imagining a world of pharaohs, priests, and endless deserts. Artists sketched its surface, inspired by the intricacy of the carvings, while writers pondered the stories that had been lost to time. Even children, with eyes wide in wonder, could sense the gravitas of the object before them, though they could not yet comprehend its full significance. The stone demanded respect, and it imposed patience. Its secrets would not be revealed to the casual observer or the hasty scholar. Meanwhile, European intellectual circles were aflame with speculation. French scholars who had accompanied Napoleon's campaign lamented their loss, claiming that Britain had stolen a piece of intellectual heritage. British academics, on the other hand, saw the stone as an opportunity to assert dominance in the burgeoning field of Egyptology. Letters and treatises were exchanged, often with veiled accusations, as each side jockeyed for priority, prestige, and recognition. The Rosetta Stone had become more than an artifact. It was now a battlefield of ideas, a proxy for national pride and scholarly ambition. Its exile in London also allowed it to become a symbol of human curiosity at its peak. The stone attracted not only linguists but also philosophers, mathematicians, and explorers. Each came hoping to extract meaning, to uncover secrets that had eluded humanity for centuries. They approached it with reverence, sometimes with frustration, and often with awe. For the stone itself, immobile and silent, the noise of ambition, debate, and speculation must have seemed trivial, yet it was precisely this human obsession that would eventually lead to its decipherment. Scholars began to recognize the importance of systematic study. The Greek text offered a foothold, names, dates, and decrees that could serve as a key. The stone's discovery highlighted an essential truth. Language is both fragile and resilient. While the phonetic and symbolic systems of hieroglyphs had been lost to Egypt itself, the stone preserved them. It was a bridge across time, a testament to the enduring human desire to communicate, to record, to leave a mark upon the world that would survive beyond death, war, and decay. Yet despite all this intellectual fervor, the stone remained frustratingly silent. Attempts to decode the hieroglyphs were slow, piecemeal, and often misguided. Scholars misinterpreted symbols, proposed theories that collapsed under scrutiny, and sometimes became embroiled in rivalries as intense as any battlefield conflict. For decades, the Rosetta Stone seemed to guard its secrets jealously, rewarding only the patient, the brilliant, and the obsessive. Its exile in London was both a blessing and a curse. It was preserved, protected, and studied, yet physically distant from its origin, isolated from the cultural context that had birthed it. The stone also became a mirror, reflecting human ambition, pride, and the hunger for recognition. Some scholars sought fame more than understanding. Letters and publications brimmed with claims, counterclaims, and bitter disputes. The stone's presence had shifted the focus of European intellectual life, a pivot around which discussions of language, civilization, and history now revolved. To touch it, to study it, was to participate in a drama that spanned continents, centuries, and empires. Even as the Rosetta Stone sat in its case, its story continued to unfold. Artists, inspired by the intricate symbols, began incorporating Egyptian motifs into paintings, architecture, and decorative arts. Writers imagined tales of pharaohs and priests, blending history and legend. Students traced the carvings with fingers, dreaming of a world where these silent symbols might speak once again. The stone became more than a relic. It became an icon, a touchstone for imagination, intellect, and human curiosity. The exile of the Rosetta Stone also serves as a reminder of the human cost of discovery. It had been torn from the land that produced it, carried across battlefields and seas, and placed in a foreign museum where it would be studied under alien eyes. Its journey reflects both the grandeur and the tragedy of human ambition. The desire to know, the drive to possess, and the sacrifices, both ethical and material, made in the pursuit of knowledge. Yet despite these complexities, the stone endured. It waited. It endured because its message was timeless, because the human thirst for understanding is relentless, and because some secrets, once discovered, cannot remain hidden forever. By the early 19th century, the Rosetta Stone had settled into its role as both object of fascination and instrument of scholarly pursuit. It attracted the brilliant, the obsessive, and the curious, each drawn to the promise of unlocking the past. Its exile was not imprisonment but preparation, the slow gathering of minds, the alignment of intellects across nations, that would one day allow hieroglyphs to speak again. And in its silent endurance, the stone remained patient, a timeless witness to empires, rivalries, and the enduring human desire to understand the world and its history. The Rosetta Stone in exile thus became more than a stone. It was a symbol of preservation, of curiosity, and of the inevitable intersection between human ambition and the mysteries of the past. It taught that knowledge can be contested, that history can be both claimed and shared, and that even in isolation, some truths endure, waiting for those willing to listen. And as scholars peered at the black basalt, tracing symbols, dreaming, and debating, they were unknowingly preparing for a revelation that would resurrect the voice of a civilization and forever alter the understanding of humanity's ancient past. By the early 19th century, the Rosetta Stone had settled into a silent, commanding presence at the British Museum, but the race to decipher it had only just begun. Scholars across Europe felt the pressure, a shared urgency born not only from intellectual curiosity, but also from pride, rivalry, and the looming fear that someone else might claim the glory. The stone was more than a slab of basalt. It was a challenge written in 3 tongues, a puzzle that had survived wars, empires, and centuries of oblivion. Each line of its inscriptions demanded understanding. Each curve of its hieroglyphs whispered secrets long forgotten, and every unbroken fragment of Greek offered tantalizing clues. Time was the adversary as much as distance or difficulty. French and British scholars alike pored over sketches, rubbings, and transcriptions. Jean-François Champollion, a young prodigy from Grenoble, devoured every available copy, every note, and every theory. He was fascinated not only by the Rosetta Stone itself but by the vast, complicated tapestry of Egyptian language and culture it represented. Demotic, the middle script on the stone, was particularly confounding, bridging the everyday with the sacred, yet its patterns hinted at connections that could be teased out. Champollion began to suspect that hieroglyphs were not purely symbolic. They contained phonetic elements, layers of meaning that mirrored the Greek text below. It was a revelation that, if proven correct, would change the course of linguistics and history forever. Meanwhile, Thomas Young, an English polymath, worked feverishly in London. Young had deciphered portions of the demotic text and understood that it corresponded to sounds rather than mere ideas. He studied the names of Ptolemy and Cleopatra, tracing the cartouches, oval shapes enclosing royal names, and attempting to match them to the Greek equivalents. Young's progress was substantial, but he hesitated to claim full credit, leaving gaps that others could one day fill. The race was relentless. Scholars were aware that fame and recognition awaited the one who could fully unlock the stone's mysteries. Each night, as candles flickered over manuscripts and transcriptions, Europe's brightest minds felt both exhilaration and dread, aware that a single insight could secure immortality. The stone's inscriptions were both a guide and a gauntlet. Hieroglyphs were complex, multilayered, and context-dependent. A single symbol might represent a sound, a word, or an idea, depending on placement and neighboring signs. Misinterpretation could easily lead to decades of false conclusions. Scholars had to balance intuition with rigorous analysis, combining observation, linguistic theory, and historical context. It was an intellectual marathon, a meticulous, painstaking endeavor that required patience, brilliance, and occasionally, luck. Adding to the pressure was the historical context. Europe was in turmoil. The Napoleonic Wars had redrawn borders and toppled thrones. Political allegiances were unstable, and academic recognition was intertwined with national pride. A French scholar claiming mastery of the Rosetta Stone could be seen as a victory for France. A British scholar could claim prestige for England. Each breakthrough was not merely academic. It was an assertion of cultural and intellectual dominance. This backdrop intensified the race, making the stakes far higher than any ordinary scholarly pursuit. Despite these pressures, breakthroughs were slow and incremental. Scholars spent hours cross-referencing texts, examining cartouches, and comparing inscriptions from other Egyptian monuments. Each insight built upon the last, yet progress was often frustratingly incremental. Mistakes were frequent, assumptions had to be discarded, and patience was tested. The stone, silent and inscrutable, seemed almost alive in its defiance, daring humanity to understand its message fully. The weight of the centuries pressed down upon the scholars, reminding them that they were not merely translating symbols. They were conversing with a civilization long dead. Champollion, in particular, approached the stone with a mixture of obsession and reverence. He studied Coptic, the last living descendant of the Egyptian language, as a key to understanding the hieroglyphs. Slowly, piece by piece, he began to see patterns. Certain symbols consistently represented sounds, while others were ideograms, capturing ideas, gods, and concepts. It was an epiphany that would take years to confirm, yet it offered the first real glimpse into the minds of the ancient scribes. In that moment, the stone was no longer just a relic. It was a conversation across millennia, a bridge between the living and the dead. Meanwhile, rivalries persisted. Scholars debated endlessly, sometimes bitterly, over interpretations, methodologies, and conclusions. Letters flew between Paris, London, and beyond, filled with both insights and accusations. The Rosetta Stone had become the focal point of European intellect, a lightning rod for ambition, pride, and the human desire for recognition. Some feared that the stone's secrets might remain forever hidden, while others feared being scooped by a more brilliant or fortunate competitor. In this tension lay the drama. The pursuit of knowledge had become a race against time itself. As the years passed, the Rosetta Stone began to reveal its voice, but only slowly, cautiously. Each symbol, each line, required careful cross-examination and comparison. Scholars like Young and Champollion deciphered partial phrases, identified royal names, and traced grammatical patterns. The puzzle was immense, but progress, however incremental, was undeniable. And yet, for every breakthrough, there were countless setbacks, reminding the scholars that understanding a language is never merely technical. It is cultural, historical, and human. The stone's exile in London, far from the temples and tombs where it had originated, added another layer of challenge. Scholars had to reconstruct not just language but context. They had to imagine the Nile's rhythms, the worship of gods, and the lives of priests and scribes whose hands had carved the symbols. Without this understanding, interpretation risked becoming purely mechanical, divorced from the reality it sought to capture. The Rosetta Stone demanded empathy as much as intellect, patience as much as brilliance. In this high-stakes pursuit, the Rosetta Stone became a mirror of human ambition, endurance, and obsession. Scholars worked tirelessly, driven by the desire to unlock the past, to touch eternity through understanding, and to claim a place in the annals of history. Every sketch, transcription, and insight brought them closer to a revelation that would transform knowledge, culture, and the understanding of humanity's ancient roots. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the stone began to yield its secrets. Cartouches were matched to Greek names. Symbols were identified as phonetic elements. Grammar and syntax began to emerge from the patterns of signs. Scholars across Europe realized that hieroglyphs were not arbitrary or mystical alone, but a sophisticated written language, combining sound and meaning in ways that no modern scholar could have imagined. The Rosetta Stone, silent for 2,000 years, was speaking again, cautiously, cryptically, but unmistakably. The race against time was more than personal ambition. It was a race to preserve memory. Civilization, culture, and the human story were at stake. The stone had survived deserts, wars, and exile to offer its message, but humanity had to recognize it, understand it, and translate it. The stakes could not have been higher. This was not merely an intellectual challenge. It was the reclamation of a lost voice, a civilization resurrected through symbols and scholarship. In the quiet study of Grenoble, Jean-François Champollion hunched over his manuscripts, the flickering candlelight illuminating pages filled with sketches, notes, and painstaking transcriptions. His eyes, sharp and relentless, traced the hieroglyphs over and over, searching for patterns that might reveal the hidden logic behind the language of the gods. The Rosetta Stone lay hundreds of miles away, yet Champollion's mind traveled freely across time and space, connecting the dots that had confounded generations of scholars. For him, this was not merely a scholarly pursuit. It was a calling, a dialogue with the past that demanded his total devotion. Champollion's genius lay in his understanding of Coptic, the descendant of ancient Egyptian. Unlike other scholars who approached the stone as an isolated puzzle, he understood that language was living, even in its remnants. Through Coptic, he began to hear the echoes of the words carved 2,000 years earlier. Names of kings, gods, and cities resonated, and slowly, a method emerged. He realized that hieroglyphs were not purely symbolic. They were a combination of phonetic signs and ideograms, a dual system that conveyed both sound and meaning. Each symbol was a key, each line a thread in the tapestry of Egyptian thought. The breakthrough came when he compared the cartouches, oval shapes enclosing royal names, with the Greek inscriptions. Here was a concrete link. The name Ptolemy appeared in both texts. By cross-referencing the signs within the cartouches with the known letters of the Greek name, Champollion could begin to assign phonetic values to individual hieroglyphs. This was revolutionary. For centuries, the symbols had been considered magical, mystical, and beyond rational comprehension. Now, a path was opening, a way to decode a language that had been silent since the fall of the pharaonic era. The process was painstaking. Champollion spent months analyzing inscriptions from other monuments, comparing them with the Rosetta Stone and with Coptic texts. Every insight required verification. Every assumption demanded scrutiny. Mistakes could lead to years of false conclusions. Yet his dedication was total. He immersed himself in the rhythms, grammar, and symbolism of ancient Egypt, thinking like a scribe, a priest, a man who had devoted his life to recording the sacred. Slowly, the hieroglyphs began to yield, their secrets emerging through a combination of intellect, intuition, and relentless observation. The revelation was not instantaneous. It arrived in stages, moments of clarity punctuating long periods of frustration. One evening, as Champollion worked by candlelight, he recognized a recurring pattern in a sequence of hieroglyphs that corresponded to the name Cleopatra. The phonetic signs aligned perfectly with the Greek text. A shiver ran through him. He understood that this method could be applied more broadly, that the Rosetta Stone could serve as the master key to unlock hieroglyphs across temples, tombs, and monuments. The voices of the past, once lost to time, were stirring. Champollion wrote furiously, his quill scratching across paper, documenting every connection, every pattern, every phonetic value. He knew that this discovery was more than academic. It was historical resurrection. Through the Rosetta Stone, He could reclaim the lost knowledge of a civilization that had fascinated humanity for centuries. The hieroglyphs were no longer indecipherable mysteries. They were letters, words, and sentences that could be read, understood, and contextualized. For the first time, humans could hear the thoughts of the pharaohs, the decrees of kings, the prayers of priests, and the wisdom of scribes. Yet the moment of revelation was accompanied by tension. Champollion understood that his insights might be contested. Other scholars, particularly in Britain, had made significant contributions, and disputes over priority and recognition were inevitable. He also knew that his work would be scrutinized, critiqued, and debated for years to come. But Champollion's obsession with truth and understanding outweighed all fears of rivalry. For him, the stone was not a trophy. It was a voice, a living connection to the minds of the ancient Egyptians. The importance of accuracy, of faithfulness to the original texts, was paramount. When he finally presented his findings in 1822, the impact was immediate and profound. In a letter to the Académie des Inscriptions et Belles Lettres, he outlined his method, demonstrating how hieroglyphs could be deciphered through comparison with Coptic and Greek. The academic world was stunned. A language that had been silent for nearly 2 millennia was suddenly accessible. Scholars could now read inscriptions on temple walls, papyrus scrolls, and monuments, piecing together stories that had been hidden for centuries. The Rosetta Stone had fulfilled its destiny, not merely as an artifact but as a key to an entire civilization. The emotional impact of Champollion's revelation cannot be overstated. The world suddenly understood that the ancients were not lost, that their thoughts, culture, and religion could be studied directly, rather than inferred from fragmentary records or foreign accounts. The discovery sparked a renaissance in Egyptology. Temples were revisited, tombs were studied anew, and the histories of pharaohs like Ramses, Thutmose, and Ptolemy were reconstructed with unprecedented clarity. A civilization that had once seemed distant, enigmatic, and untouchable was now within reach, its voice resonating across centuries. Champollion's success also carried a profound human element. It was a story of obsession, perseverance, and intellectual bravery. He had devoted himself to a pursuit that many considered impossible, confronting centuries of silence, misunderstanding, and academic skepticism. His triumph was not simply the decipherment of symbols. It was the affirmation of human curiosity, the idea that even the most formidable mysteries can be overcome through dedication, insight, and relentless study. And yet, as with all great discoveries, there was an emotional complexity. The Rosetta Stone, so long exiled from its homeland, had become a symbol of both triumph and loss. While its secrets were finally understood, its presence in a foreign museum reminded the world of the fragility of cultural heritage and the often uneasy intersection of conquest and scholarship. The voices of the past had been restored, but not in the place where they were born. This duality, revelation and displacement, added a layer of poignancy to Champollion's achievement. Ultimately, the revelation marked a turning point in human understanding. Through the meticulous work of a single man, amplified by the collaborative efforts of scholars across Europe, the language of the gods had spoken once more. The Rosetta Stone, silent for 2,000 years, had become a bridge across time, connecting modern humans to the priests, scribes, and kings of ancient Egypt. It was a testament not only to the ingenuity of the ancients but to the perseverance, curiosity, and brilliance of the human spirit. Champollion's breakthrough also ignited a sense of wonder and possibility. If the Rosetta Stone could resurrect a lost language, what other secrets might the earth conceal? Tombs, monuments, and artifacts across the globe were suddenly seen not merely as remnants of the past, but as potential keys to understanding civilizations thought lost forever. The stone's power was both symbolic and practical. It represented the triumph of intellect over time, the ability of humans to reclaim voices long silenced by history. And so, the Rosetta Stone, once buried in the sands of Fort Julian, transported across deserts and seas, exiled in a foreign museum, had finally fulfilled its destiny. Through Champollion, it spoke, revealing the thoughts, decrees, and beliefs of a civilization whose mysteries had enchanted humanity for centuries. The triumph was not only academic, it was emotional, philosophical, and deeply human. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, the words of the ancient Egyptians could be read, understood, and appreciated, and the world was forever changed. With Champollion's revelation, a floodgate had opened, and the ancient world of Egypt began to reveal itself in ways that no one had dared to imagine. The Rosetta Stone was no longer merely a symbol of mystery or a prize of conquest. It had become a literal key, unlocking the voice of a civilization long thought irretrievably lost. Scholars, explorers, and artists across Europe now approach temples, tombs, and monuments with new eyes, eager to decode inscriptions that had previously been dismissed as incomprehensible decoration. Every hieroglyph became a letter in a story waiting to be told, a window into lives, beliefs, and ambitions that had survived millennia. The process of decoding was painstaking. Ancient Egyptian texts were complex and multifaceted, blending phonetics with ideograms and religious symbolism. A single glyph could represent a sound, a word, or an entire concept depending on context. Scholars like Champollion meticulously cross-referenced symbols, drawing connections between inscriptions on the Rosetta Stone and those scattered across monuments, obelisks, and papyri. They traced patterns, noting repetitions, variants, and regional styles, slowly reconstructing the grammar and syntax that underpinned the hieroglyphic language. Each discovery was a small victory, a step closer to resurrecting the voices of kings and priests, farmers and scribes. The emotional stakes were high. Egypt, once a distant land of legend and imagination, became startlingly human and immediate. The tombs of pharaohs, long silent and solemn, now spoke in recognizable words. Religious texts, previously inscrutable, revealed prayers, spells, and rituals that had guided the lives and deaths of countless Egyptians. Temple inscriptions described conquests, piety, and divine relationships with clarity that was almost shocking. The abstract symbols that had once been dismissed as decoration were alive with meaning, carrying the weight of history and the intimate details of daily life. Scholars realized that they were not merely reading. They were conversing with the past, listening to the thoughts, fears, and aspirations of a civilization long buried beneath the sands. The revelations were not purely academic. They carried profound cultural and emotional resonance. Egyptians, through their inscriptions, had expressed a worldview in which life, death, and the divine were inseparable. Deities walked among humans, kings were mediators of cosmic order, and the afterlife was as vivid and structured as the world of the living. By decoding these texts, scholars glimpsed the moral, spiritual, and philosophical frameworks that guided ancient Egyptians. The past was no longer distant. It was present, intricate, and vividly human. The broader implications for history were staggering. Previously, much of what was known about Egypt had come from Greek and Roman accounts, often written centuries after the events described. These accounts were filtered, biased, and fragmentary. Now, through the Rosetta Stone and the work of Champollion, history could be reconstructed from the Egyptians' own perspective. The names of pharaohs, the details of political decrees, and the intricacies of religious practices could be understood directly. Historians could finally separate myth from fact, speculation from evidence, and reconstruct a narrative rooted in authentic voices rather than distant interpretation. Yet the work was far from complete. Decoding was only the beginning. Interpretation demanded context, understanding the cultural, geographical, and historical frameworks that gave words their true meaning. Scholars traveled across Egypt, studying temple reliefs, tomb paintings, and papyrus scrolls, cross-referencing symbols and passages. They reconstructed dynastic timelines, pieced together the stories of rulers, and traced the evolution of religious practices over centuries. Each hieroglyph deciphered became a breadcrumb, leading deeper into a civilization that had remained largely silent for thousands of years. The human element of these discoveries was striking. Every scholar, explorer, and traveler who engaged with these texts experienced awe and humility. To read a pharaoh's decree was to glimpse the mind of a ruler who had wielded absolute power and responsibility. To read a prayer carved on the wall of a tomb was to feel the fear, hope, and devotion of a person confronting mortality. The Rosetta Stone had transformed abstract symbols into lived experience, bridging the millennia and connecting modern humans to a distant past in profoundly emotional ways. The revelations also ignited a renaissance in art, literature, and scholarship. Egyptian motifs, once exotic curiosities, now carried meaning. Writers and artists incorporated authentic symbols and themes into their works, inspired by the stories revealed through decoding. Archaeology became a disciplined science rather than a pursuit of treasure, as scholars sought not merely artifacts but understanding. The Rosetta Stone had shifted the paradigm. The past could speak, and the duty of humanity was to listen with care, respect, and rigor. Yet the process was fraught with challenges. Not every inscription was complete, legible, or preserved. Tombs had been looted, temples weathered, and papyri damaged. Scholars had to make educated guesses, often revising their interpretations as new discoveries emerged. Misreading a symbol could distort an entire narrative, and the stakes of accuracy were enormous. The Rosetta Stone was a guide, a key, but it demanded intellect, patience, and intuition. It rewarded those who approached it with dedication and punished those who sought shortcuts or sensationalism. As the hieroglyphs spoke more clearly, the ancient Egyptians became vividly human. Their names, deeds, and words resonated across centuries. Pharaohs were not merely symbols of power. They were individuals making decisions, expressing piety, and navigating the challenges of their time. Priests, scribes, and common citizens revealed aspirations, fears, and rituals, providing a holistic picture of society. The Rosetta Stone had transformed history from a series of fragmented anecdotes into a coherent, deeply human narrative. The emotional impact on scholars and the public alike was profound. People felt awe at the survival of knowledge, wonder at the complexity and sophistication of Egyptian writing, and a deep connection to a world that had seemed inaccessible. The Rosetta Stone had not only unlocked words but rekindled imagination, curiosity, and respect for the ingenuity of human civilization. Its discovery and subsequent decoding were triumphs not merely of intellect, but of human persistence, empathy, and vision. By decoding the past, humanity had reclaimed a voice that had been silenced for millennia. Egypt, once shrouded in mystery, became a place of study, admiration, and understanding. The Rosetta Stone's impact rippled far beyond the realm of academia. It transformed culture, inspired generations of scholars, and established a methodology for approaching ancient civilizations with rigor and respect. It demonstrated that even the most formidable enigmas could be understood through persistence, observation, and insight, and that the past could speak to the present with clarity and eloquence. In the end, decoding the Rosetta Stone was not merely a scholarly victory. It was a triumph of human curiosity, patience, and the relentless pursuit of understanding. Through its inscriptions, the ancient Egyptians spoke again, offering their thoughts, their laws, and their beliefs. Through the dedication of scholars like Champollion, these voices were heard, analyzed, and appreciated. The past, once distant and silent, had returned, vibrant and intelligible, offering humanity an unprecedented glimpse into its own history and the enduring power of language. With the Rosetta Stone finally speaking through Champollion's revelations, the world turned its gaze to the sprawling monuments of Egypt, previously silent witnesses to history. Temples and tombs that had stood for millennia, weathered by sun, sand, and time, now became readable chronicles of lives, beliefs, and ambitions. Each carved wall, each painted papyrus, each stone relief offered more than aesthetic beauty. They were words, narratives, prayers, and decrees waiting to be understood. Scholars approached these sacred sites with awe, as though opening letters sent across the centuries, fragile messages preserved in stone and pigment. The temples of Karnak, Luxor, and Philae were among the first to reveal their stories. Columns adorned with hieroglyphs spoke of pharaohs' triumphs and divine favor. Processional ways, once incomprehensible, now narrated religious festivals and the ritual cycles of gods walking among humans. Priests, long gone, whispered across time through inscriptions detailing the daily rites performed to sustain cosmic order. Each discovery was a revelation. The meticulous records of offerings, prayers, and ceremonial acts displayed a civilization obsessed with balance, harmony, and the eternal. Reading these inscriptions was more than decoding symbols. It was entering the rhythm and soul of ancient life. Tombs, particularly those in the Valley of the Kings, offered intimate glimpses into human vulnerability and aspiration. The walls illustrated journeys into the afterlife, full of trials, demons, and divine judges. Funerary texts, once mystifying, now outline spells and incantations designed to protect the soul and guide it safely to the realm of Osiris. Pharaohs who had seemed distant and godlike in history books became real, mortal, and yet striving toward immortality. Hieroglyphs detailing offerings, familial ties, and moral obligations revealed both personal and societal concerns, providing an emotional resonance that transcended centuries. Even smaller, neglected monuments began to reveal stories. Stelae and obelisks, often overlooked, carried narratives of land ownership, temple donations, and political decrees. Inscriptions that were once considered repetitive or decorative became meaningful windows into administration, law, and everyday life. Egypt's society unfolded in layers. The powerful elite, the priests, artisans, and farmers, all leaving traces of their existence in these texts. The language of the gods was no longer an enigma. It became a map to understand social hierarchies, religious devotion, and human ambition. The emotional impact of these discoveries was immense. Scholars often reported awe and even tears when reading inscriptions that described simple human fears and desires. The hope for a safe journey after death, the love for family, or the pride in one's accomplishments. The Rosetta Stone had unlocked not only a language but the humanity of those long gone. In their words, humans could recognize themselves, their desires, and their mortality reflected back through millennia. It was as if time had folded, allowing the past and present to converse intimately. These studies also shed light on the evolution of religious belief. Gods like Ra, Isis, and Horus were not merely mythological figures. They were central to the governance, morality, and identity of the people. Rituals described in hieroglyphic texts revealed that religion was both deeply personal and inherently political. Kings were intermediaries between the divine and mortal realms, and priests were custodians of knowledge, power, and the cosmic balance. Understanding these texts allowed scholars to see not only the symbols but the philosophical and spiritual frameworks that guided every aspect of Egyptian life. Beyond temples and tombs, papyri discovered in sites like Deir el-Medina provided an intimate portrait of daily life. Records of work assignments, letters, and contracts revealed the human dimension of civilization. Artisans negotiating wages, families managing estates, disputes over property. The Rosetta Stone had given scholars the tools to read these mundane but profoundly human documents, transforming abstract symbols into voices of real people. It was a reminder that history is not only shaped by kings and battles but also by ordinary lives, recorded and preserved against all odds. The interplay between monumental and mundane texts highlighted the sophistication of Egyptian record-keeping and communication. Hieroglyphs, once considered ornamental, proved to be precise tools for conveying legal, religious, and personal information. The system was both practical and symbolic, reflecting the civilization's obsession with harmony and the interconnectedness of all aspects of life. Scholars marveled at the complexity. A single symbol could carry multiple meanings, convey sound, and embody profound religious or philosophical significance. Understanding these layers required not only intellect but empathy, the ability to think as an Egyptian priest or scribe, centuries removed from one's own context. Explorers and archaeologists began to map patterns across time and geography. Comparing inscriptions from Thebes to those of Memphis revealed political alliances, dynastic continuity, and cultural shifts. Religious texts showed the evolution of rituals, while funerary inscriptions illustrated changing beliefs about death and the afterlife. The Rosetta Stone, once a single slab of basalt, had become the cornerstone of this vast endeavor, the Rosetta Stone effect. A single artifact unlocking a network of understanding that spans centuries and thousands of miles. The act of reading these inscriptions also invoked reflection on human ambition, mortality, and the desire for legacy. Pharaohs built temples and tombs not merely for themselves, but as statements of eternity. Priests and scribes inscribed texts with precision and care, believing that their words would outlast them. Ordinary people, through contracts and papyri, left traces of their lives for posterity. The Rosetta Stone had enabled modern humans to participate in this dialogue, to witness the enduring human need to be remembered and understood. Yet for all the clarity brought by the Rosetta Stone, mysteries remained. Some texts were fragmentary, some monuments irreparably damaged, and some symbols resisted interpretation even after decades of study. These gaps, however, added to the allure. The past was not fully conquered. It continued to invite exploration, debate, and discovery. Every temple and tomb offered the potential for revelation, and the possibility of uncovering secrets long hidden created an ongoing tension between known and unknown, between certainty and wonder. Through the study of temples, tombs, and forgotten inscriptions, the Rosetta Stone became more than a linguistic breakthrough. It became a bridge to human consciousness itself. Scholars, artists, and the general public could engage with lives, beliefs, and experiences that were at once alien and familiar. The civilization of Egypt, once distant and inscrutable, now spoke across time, sharing wisdom, warnings, and stories that resonated deeply with anyone willing to listen. In this process, history transformed from a static record of events into a living, breathing narrative, vibrant with emotion, insight, and meaning. The power of the Rosetta Stone and its descendants in temples and tombs lies not only in knowledge but in connection. It reminds humanity that the desire to communicate, to be remembered, and to understand transcends centuries. The inscriptions, once thought decorative, are now recognized as a testament to human creativity, devotion, and intellectual sophistication. Each symbol, each story, each record is a voice from the past, no longer silent, speaking across time to those who seek to hear and understand. Through the meticulous study of these forgotten voices, humanity learned not just about the mechanics of hieroglyphs or the reigns of pharaohs, but about the enduring human spirit. The Rosetta Stone had opened the door. Temples, tombs, and papyri revealed the world behind it. In their inscriptions, modern readers found a mirror, reflections of fear, faith, ambition, and hope, a reminder that the human experience, though separated by millennia, remains profoundly connected. The triumph of Champollion's breakthrough did not arrive in a vacuum. Europe's scholarly world, still brimming with nationalist pride and personal ambition, became a battleground of intellect, ego, and recognition. For decades, the race to decode the Rosetta Stone had drawn some of the continent's brightest minds into a tense, competitive arena. Every insight, every partial decipherment, became both a tool and a weapon, as scholars jockeyed for precedence and prestige. The triumph of understanding was inseparable from rivalry, and the story of the Rosetta Stone was now as much about human ambition as it was about ancient Egyptian civilization. Thomas Young, the English polymath who had made remarkable strides in understanding the demotic script, felt both pride and frustration. His work had laid a foundation for phonetic analysis, yet Champollion's more comprehensive method ultimately garnered acclaim. Letters flew between London and Paris, laden with polite respect and subtle barbs, as each scholar sought to assert their contributions. Young's meticulous documentation, though groundbreaking, was overshadowed by Champollion's dramatic revelation of the full hieroglyphic system. Recognition, as it often does in the world of scholarship, became a prize as fiercely contested as the stone itself had been during its transport from Egypt. Across Europe, debates erupted in journals, academies, and private correspondence. Scholars dissected every claim, every translation, every methodological choice. Some French intellectuals accused Young of overstepping, suggesting that he had only scratched the surface, while British scholars defended his insights as critical and foundational. The Rosetta Stone had become a mirror of human ambition. It reflected brilliance, impatience, pride, and insecurity all at once. Each public lecture or publication carried the weight of national and personal stakes, transforming scholarly pursuit into a subtle but relentless drama. The rivalries were not mere intellectual exercises. They had deep human dimensions. Pride, reputation, and the desire for immortality drove scholars to sleepless nights, exhaustive study, and sometimes bitter confrontation. Personal correspondence reveals the intense emotional toll. Young expressed admiration for Champollion, yet underlying that was a simmering frustration at being eclipsed. Champollion himself, though celebrated, felt pressure to defend his methodology and prove the accuracy of his decipherment. Recognition, in this context, was not a simple accolade but a validation of years of obsession, risk, and sacrifice. This struggle for acknowledgement also highlighted the intersection of nationalism and scholarship. France, recovering from the upheavals of revolution and Napoleonic wars, celebrated Champollion's work as a triumph of French intellect. England, meanwhile, had nurtured Young's initial contributions and took pride in its role in the discovery and analysis of the Rosetta Stone. The artifact, once a simple slab of basalt, had become a proxy for cultural and intellectual dominance. Victory in decipherment carried symbolic weight. It was proof that one nation's scholars could claim mastery over the wisdom of the ancients, a kind of soft power that resonated across borders. Rivalries were further inflamed by the slow dissemination of findings. Early publications were delayed, sketches and copies of inscriptions circulated unevenly, and interpretations often contradicted each other. This created a climate of suspicion and competition, with scholars reading one another's work carefully, sometimes critically, sometimes with envy. Letters reveal sharp criticism, subtle mockery, and intense intellectual scrutiny. In this environment, every insight was both a revelation and a challenge, every lecture an assertion of authority. The Rosetta Stone, long silent, had indirectly fueled decades of human drama far more intricate than the texts it contained. Yet, despite the friction, the rivalries also propelled scholarship forward. Competing analyses, corrections, and counterarguments sharpened understanding. Scholars were forced to justify their conclusions rigorously, revisit assumptions, and consider alternative interpretations. The human tension surrounding recognition and rivalry accelerated progress, pushing the boundaries of knowledge faster than any solitary pursuit might have done. In a sense, the personal and national stakes ensured that the Rosetta Stone's secrets were scrutinized with unprecedented rigor, leading to a more robust and comprehensive understanding than might have been possible in a cooperative, unpressured environment. The interplay of recognition and rivalry was particularly evident in public forums. Academic societies, lectures, and publications became arenas where claims were tested, praised, or critiqued. The audience was not only scholarly peers but also educated elites, diplomats, and sometimes the curious public, all captivated by the unfolding intellectual drama. This environment elevated the stakes. A single error could damage reputation, while a correct insight could elevate a scholar to lasting fame. The Rosetta Stone, silent for 2 millennia, had become a catalyst for human ambition, reshaping not only knowledge but the social and cultural networks of scholarship. The human cost of these rivalries was tangible. Obsession led to exhaustion, stress, and moments of despair. Scholars isolated themselves in study, poring over sketches and transcriptions, sometimes neglecting family, health, and social life. The pressure to claim priority, to secure recognition, and to prove oneself in the eyes of history was intense. Yet within this crucible of ambition, brilliance emerged. Champollion's careful methodology, Young's analytical rigor, and countless other contributions coalesced into a profound understanding of hieroglyphs. The human drama surrounding recognition, rivalries, and personal ambition thus became inseparable from the intellectual triumph itself. Nationalism also added layers of complexity to recognition. Champollion's achievements were celebrated in France as a triumph of French scholarship, linking his success to national pride and identity. British scholars, including Young, received acclaim at home for their contributions to demotic studies, emphasizing the continuity of British intellectual influence. Across Europe, scholars debated not only methodology and results but also which nation's intellect should be credited with the Rosetta Stone's ultimate decipherment. In this context, rivalry and recognition were entangled with patriotism, prestige, and the cultural politics of knowledge. Ultimately, the story of rivalries and recognition illustrates a timeless truth about human pursuit of knowledge. Discovery is never purely intellectual. It is shaped by personality, ambition, pride, national identity, and the desire to leave a mark on history. The Rosetta Stone, a silent artifact for millennia, became a catalyst for human emotion as much as human understanding. The drama of rivalry, of claiming credit and defending insight, underscores the humanity behind the pursuit of knowledge, a reminder that even in the loftiest endeavors, human desires and insecurities are ever present. Through this tension, the Rosetta Stone gained a dual legacy. It was both a linguistic breakthrough and a human story. Scholars, driven by ambition, ego, and curiosity, pushed themselves to the limits of intellect and perseverance. Recognition, earned and contested, validated their toil. Rivalries ensured that the stone's secrets were scrutinized rigorously, accelerating progress and deepening understanding. And in this interplay of ambition and intellect, the stone transcended its material form, becoming both a key to the past and a mirror reflecting the human spirit. In the end, the rivalries surrounding the Rosetta Stone did not diminish its significance. They amplified it. Through competition, scrutiny, and recognition, the hieroglyphs were finally read, understood, and contextualized. Human ambition, with all its brilliance, jealousy, and persistence, had brought the silent voice of Egypt to life. The Rosetta Stone had become more than a key to language. It was a testament to the complexities of intellect, the drama of discovery, and the enduring human desire to understand and be remembered. Champollion's decipherment of the Rosetta Stone did more than illuminate the language of ancient Egypt. It sent ripples across the world, reshaping scholarship, inspiring exploration, and altering humanity's understanding of its own past. Within years, the knowledge contained in hieroglyphs began to influence not just historians, but archaeologists, linguists, artists, and even the general public. Egypt, once a land of legend and speculation, emerged as a civilization whose voices could now be directly heard, their decrees, prayers, and personal stories accessible across millennia. The global impact was profound, far-reaching, and transformative. Archaeology experienced a revolution. Before the Rosetta Stone's translation, excavations were often haphazard, driven by treasure hunting rather than systematic study. Now, scholars could read inscriptions at sites across Egypt, understand their context, and reconstruct events, beliefs, and societal structures with unprecedented accuracy. Tombs in the Valley of the Kings, long considered cryptic or merely ceremonial, revealed not just funerary rites but complex narratives of governance, religion, and daily life. Temples that had been admired for aesthetic beauty now became texts to be read and understood, revealing dynastic histories, priestly records, and accounts of battles and treaties. The decipherment turned stone, papyrus, and pigment into living archives. The global academic community was electrified. Universities across Europe established Egyptology as a formal discipline, drawing scholars from distant nations into collaborative study, sometimes cooperative, sometimes fiercely competitive. Libraries acquired facsimiles, artists reproduced inscriptions, and journals published debates over translation and interpretation. The Rosetta Stone had sparked a surge of intellectual curiosity. For the first time, humanity could access a comprehensive record of one of its oldest civilizations, reconstructing narratives that had been silent for centuries. Scholars now understood that ancient Egypt had not only influenced the Mediterranean world but had a profound cultural sophistication of its own, deserving of study on its terms. Beyond the academic sphere, the decipherment inspired the arts and popular imagination. European painters, architects, and writers drew on newly understood symbols to enrich their work. Obelisks were replicated in public spaces, and Egyptian motifs appeared in architecture, decorative arts, and literature. The mystique of Egypt became a lens through which contemporary society could explore ideas of immortality, power, and faith. Museums worldwide began to collect, categorize, and display Egyptian artifacts with a deeper appreciation for their meaning, transforming cultural understanding and public engagement with history. Education, too, was transformed. Students who previously learned about Egypt through fragmented Greek and Roman accounts could now study inscriptions directly. The Rosetta Stone became a case study in linguistic analysis, history, and cultural preservation. By decoding the language of the ancients, humanity could engage with a civilization in a far more nuanced and empathetic way. Young scholars were inspired not only to study Egypt but also to consider the methodologies that allowed a lost language to be resurrected, fostering critical thinking, curiosity, and intellectual rigor. The impact extended to politics and national identity as well. European powers, in an era of colonial expansion, recognized the prestige associated with the study of ancient civilizations. Possession, display, and analysis of Egyptian artifacts became intertwined with national pride. Museums became not just repositories of knowledge but symbols of cultural authority and influence. France, Britain, and other nations vied to sponsor excavations, acquire manuscripts, and publish findings, often framing their achievements as evidence of intellectual and cultural superiority. The Rosetta Stone, once a silent slab, thus became a global emblem of power, knowledge, and influence. The decipherment also reshaped historical understanding. Many previously held assumptions about Egyptian society, religion, and governance were overturned. The civilization was revealed as highly sophisticated, with intricate legal systems, elaborate religious practices, and a bureaucracy capable of managing vast resources. Pharaohs, once seen as mythic or semi-divine figures, became real rulers with political agendas, family dynamics, and social obligations. Scholars could reconstruct timelines, trace dynasties, and understand cultural evolution with a precision previously unimaginable. Humanity's perception of the ancient world, once filtered through foreign narratives, now had a direct and authentic voice. The emotional impact of these revelations was profound. People felt awe at the survival of knowledge, wonder at the complexity of Egyptian writing, and a deep connection to lives separated by millennia. The realization that human beings 2,000 years ago thought, prayed, governed, and loved in ways that could still be understood created a sense of continuity and shared humanity. The Rosetta Stone, once merely a relic, had become a bridge between epochs, connecting modern humans to the hopes, fears, and ambitions of those long gone. The influence was also interdisciplinary. Linguists drew lessons about phonetics, grammar, and the evolution of language. Anthropologists gained insights into ritual, belief, and social organization. Historians reconstructed political alliances, religious hierarchies, and cultural exchanges. The decoding of hieroglyphs provided a methodology for approaching other lost or undeciphered scripts, demonstrating the power of comparative analysis and linguistic deduction. In essence, the Rosetta Stone became not only a key to Egypt but a model for understanding lost civilizations worldwide. Colonial expeditions, while often morally fraught, were fueled in part by the new knowledge unlocked by the stone. Teams of archaeologists, sometimes sponsored by European governments, traveled deeper into Egypt, systematically cataloging and preserving inscriptions, monuments, and artifacts. They approached their work with scientific rigor, inspired by the realization that knowledge could survive centuries if carefully recorded and studied. The Rosetta Stone had demonstrated that even a single artifact could illuminate entire civilizations. Thus, every temple wall, tomb, and fragment of papyrus became a potential revelation. Yet the global impact was not limited to scholars and governments. For the general public, Egypt shifted from myth and legend to reality. Exhibitions, books, and illustrated journals brought hieroglyphs and Egyptian stories into homes, inspiring imagination and curiosity. People marveled at the idea that human ingenuity could speak across millennia, that voices once thought lost could be recovered, understood, and appreciated. The Rosetta Stone became emblematic of humanity's capacity to connect with its own history, to learn from the past, and to honor the intellectual achievements of other cultures. Perhaps most importantly, the decipherment reminded the world of the fragility and resilience of human knowledge. Civilizations can rise and fall, languages can vanish, and monuments can crumble. Yet traces endure, waiting for minds capable of understanding them. The Rosetta Stone, silent for centuries, had spoken again through human persistence, intellect, and curiosity. Its global impact was a testament to the power of discovery, the universality of knowledge, and the enduring human desire to connect across time. Through the Rosetta Stone, humanity learned a profound lesson. The past is never truly lost if there are those willing to listen. Every artifact, inscription, and text holds the potential to transform understanding, inspire generations, and reshape culture. The stone's journey from a sun-scorched Egyptian fort to the halls of the British Museum, and finally into human comprehension, became a symbol of resilience, intellect, and the global reach of discovery. Its legacy would be felt in classrooms, museums, libraries, and archaeological sites around the world, a reminder that knowledge, once uncovered, belongs to all who seek it. Ultimately, the Rosetta Stone's decipherment marked a turning point in human history. It bridged gaps between past and present, between cultures, and between individuals separated by centuries. Its global impact extended far beyond linguistics or archaeology. It reshaped imagination, scholarship, and the collective understanding of human civilization. By giving voice to the ancients, the Rosetta Stone inspired generations to explore, question, and dream, leaving a legacy that continues to resonate across the world today. As the Rosetta Stone had unlocked the hieroglyphic language, an entire world long hidden beneath sand, stone, and time began to emerge. Egypt, with its sprawling deserts and majestic Nile, revealed layers of history previously inaccessible, as though the land itself had been holding its breath, waiting for the right voice to translate its stories. Scholars, archaeologists, and explorers poured into sites across the country, each discovery a fragment of a long-lost puzzle. Tombs, temples, stelae, and papyri began to speak, revealing histories that had been obscured by conquest, decay, and the passage of millennia. Every dig, every deciphered inscription, was a step closer to unearthing forgotten lives, lost dynasties, and civilizations that had shaped the ancient world. The excitement was palpable. Sites like Saqqara, Giza, and Thebes became theaters of revelation, where scholars could read inscriptions detailing kings' decrees, victories, religious observances, and even intimate personal notes. For the first time, human stories that had been buried beneath layers of dust and myth became tangible. Inscriptions on tomb walls described the life of officials and artisans, their roles in society, their families, and their faith in the afterlife. Temples documented offerings and rituals performed over centuries, revealing a complex, organized civilization that had mastered both language and administration. The past, once distant, became vividly present through words carved in stone and written on fragile papyrus. These unearthing efforts extended beyond monumental architecture. Small, overlooked artifacts, ostraca, pottery shards, and minor stelae, held secrets as profound as those of grand temples. Artisan sketches, letters exchanged among priests, and administrative notes provided insight into daily life, social hierarchies, and cultural norms. The Rosetta Stone had given scholars the tool to read these texts, transforming what might have seemed mundane into a window onto human thought, aspiration, and struggle. Even the simplest note, once indecipherable, could illuminate the hopes, fears, and ambitions of people who had lived thousands of years before. The process of reconstructing forgotten histories was meticulous. Each artifact, each inscription, required careful cross-referencing with others. Scholars compared spelling variations, grammatical structures, and symbolic representations to piece together narratives that were coherent and historically accurate. This painstaking work revealed patterns of governance, religion, and culture that had been invisible for centuries. Dynastic timelines were reconstructed, detailing the rise and fall of pharaohs, shifts in religious authority, and the ebb and flow of political power. The ancient world, once a blur of names and dates, became a dynamic, living civilization. The human element of these discoveries was striking. As inscriptions were translated, scholars found themselves connecting with individuals who had lived, worked, and dreamed centuries before. The voice of a scribe recording taxes, a priest noting temple offerings, or a pharaoh proclaiming a military victory carried weight beyond academic significance. These were not abstractions. They were humans reaching across time, their intentions and emotions preserved in ink and stone. The act of unearthing forgotten histories became an intimate conversation with lives long gone, a reminder that the human experience, though separated by millennia, contains threads of continuity and shared meaning. These revelations also reshaped understanding of Egyptian religion and philosophy. Texts describing rituals, prayers, and funerary practices offered insight into a worldview centered on balance, order, and continuity. Gods like Ammonius, Isis, and Osiris were no longer mythic symbols alone, but part of a vibrant cosmology intertwined with politics, daily life, and moral philosophy. Temples, once appreciated for their grandeur, were understood as active centers of ritual, education, and governance. The religious and political spheres were inseparable, and the inscriptions allowed modern readers to witness the intricate interplay between belief, authority, and societal order. The Rosetta Stone's impact on unearthing forgotten histories extended to understanding cultural and technological achievements. Architectural inscriptions detailed construction techniques, planning, and labor organization. Mathematical texts on papyri revealed advanced knowledge of geometry, measurement, and astronomy. Literary works illuminated storytelling, moral instruction, and poetic expression. The civilization's sophistication, once obscured by time and myth, became evident in its intellectual, artistic, and practical achievements. Each translated inscription was not just a historical fact but a testament to human ingenuity, creativity, and resilience. The excitement of discovery often came with moments of shock and revelation. Tombs previously thought empty yielded treasures. Inscriptions clarified historical misconceptions, and ancient practices challenged modern assumptions about social organization and gender roles. The unearthing of forgotten histories also revealed the fragility of civilization. Many texts were fragmentary, monuments damaged, and cities buried under centuries of sand and neglect. Each discovery was a reminder that human knowledge, though resilient, requires care, preservation, and interpretation. The Rosetta Stone had demonstrated that even a single artifact could unlock vast understanding. Countless others awaited similar revelation. The global academic community recognized the stakes. Scholars collaborated and competed, sometimes racing to excavate, document, and publish findings before their peers. The study of Egypt became a crucible of both intellect and human emotion, combining curiosity, ambition, and passion. Teams meticulously mapped tombs, recorded inscriptions, and reconstructed histories, ensuring that the voices of the past were not lost again. Every translated glyph was a triumph of patience, intellect, and human determination, bringing to life narratives that had remained hidden for centuries. Uncovering forgotten histories also transformed the public imagination. Exhibitions, illustrated journals, and popular books brought Egypt to the attention of readers across Europe and beyond. Ordinary people, previously relying on myth, legend, and second-hand accounts, could now glimpse authentic stories of kings, priests, and commoners. The idea that humans could hear the thoughts, beliefs, and decrees of a civilization long gone captured the imagination, inspiring art, literature, and cultural fascination. The Rosetta Stone had not only revived scholarly understanding but also breathed life into popular imagination. Perhaps most profoundly, unearthing forgotten histories offered a sense of connection and continuity. Humanity was no longer constrained to its own era. Through careful study, patience, and insight, the distant past could be accessed and understood. The lives of ancient Egyptians, once distant and unknowable, became narratives that could be studied, appreciated, and reflected upon. The Rosetta Stone, and the scholarship it enabled, bridged centuries, allowing humans to converse with their predecessors in a language both literal and emotional. Through these efforts, Egyptology evolved from a niche pursuit into a discipline capable of reconstructing entire civilizations. Every tomb, temple, and artifact offered potential revelation, but only through the meticulous application of Champollion's methods, combined with observation, analysis, and empathy, could the stories truly be understood. The Rosetta Stone had provided the key, but it was human perseverance that unlocked the doors, allowing the forgotten voices of history to be heard once more. In this way, unearthing forgotten histories became more than academic work. It became a profoundly human endeavor. Scholars were not merely translating words. They were restoring memory, reviving identity, and reconnecting with the human experience across time. The Rosetta Stone's legacy was the realization that the past, no matter how distant, could speak if one listened carefully. Each translated inscription was a triumph of intellect and imagination, a reminder that human curiosity, determination, and empathy can overcome the silence of centuries. The story of the Rosetta Stone does not end with its decipherment. Its journey across continents is a tale of human ambition, colonial intrigue, and the restless movement of history itself. Originally discovered by French soldiers during Napoleon's Egyptian campaign in 1799, the stone had first been a prize of conquest, a relic unearthed amidst the chaos of war. Its inscriptions, largely ignored in the heat of battle, were soon recognized by scholars as something extraordinary, a linguistic key capable of unlocking the secrets of an entire civilization. But even as its significance became apparent, the stone's fate was bound to the shifting tides of politics and power. When the British defeated the French in Egypt in 1801, the stone was claimed as part of the spoils of war, transported from Alexandria to London. For some, this was a triumph of military and national might. For others, a tragic removal of cultural heritage from its homeland. Crates bearing the stone traversed the Mediterranean, a heavy slab of basalt that seemed to carry with it not only the inscriptions of ancient pharaohs, but the weight of human history, ambition, and conflict. Its journey was arduous, marked by storms at sea and the logistical challenges of transporting a massive, fragile artifact through the uncertainties of early 19th century travel. Upon arrival in London, the Rosetta Stone became a symbol of both curiosity and national prestige. Scholars, artists, and dignitaries flocked to see it, marveling at the intricate inscriptions that had once been lost to time. It was housed in the British Museum, where it joined other artifacts brought from distant lands, Egypt, Greece, Mesopotamia, each item carrying stories of conquest, trade, and exploration. Yet even within the museum's walls, the stone retained a sense of mystery. Its inscriptions, though now partially understood thanks to Champollion and Young, still demanded study, and its very presence reminded visitors that knowledge, though powerful, is often bound by human circumstance, politics, and morality. The journey to the British Museum was more than a physical relocation. It represented a transformation in the stone's symbolic significance. From a functional artifact in Egypt, it became a global icon of discovery, intellect, and imperial power. Visitors gazed upon it not only to study its text but also to witness a tangible link to an ancient civilization, to feel the weight of time pressing against human curiosity. The stone's surface, cool and polished, seemed to whisper of battles, scholars' debates, and the voices of pharaohs, priests, and scribes long silenced. Its journey had imbued it with layers of meaning far beyond its original purpose as a decree of Ptolemy V. The human drama surrounding the stone's relocation is equally compelling. French scholars mourned its loss, seeing in its removal a theft of cultural heritage, a triumph of politics over scholarship. British academics, on the other hand, celebrated its arrival as an unprecedented opportunity to study and preserve history. Letters and reports from the era reveal a complex mix of admiration, jealousy, and ethical questioning. Could a nation claim ownership of history itself? Was the stone truly British now, or did it belong to humanity as a whole? These debates foreshadowed the modern discussions about repatriation, cultural property, and the responsibilities of museums. Once in the British Museum, the stone became central to a broader project of knowledge collection. Scholars meticulously documented its inscriptions, created copies, and compared them with other Egyptian texts. Exhibitions allowed the public to engage with a piece of the ancient world in a way previously impossible. For many visitors, the Rosetta Stone was a tangible connection to human ingenuity, proof that civilization, no matter how distant, had left legacies that could still be understood. It became a classroom, a subject of fascination, and a symbol of intellectual aspiration. Yet the stone's presence in London also carried a subtle tension. It was an artifact removed from its original context, displayed in a foreign land, admired by eyes that could not fully recreate the Nile's light, the temple's scale, or the desert's resonance. Scholars recognized that while its inscriptions could be translated, the cultural and geographical context could not be transported. The stone, in a sense, existed simultaneously as an object of universal significance and as a displaced relic caught between worlds. Visitors were compelled to reconcile these truths. The Rosetta Stone was a key to the past, yet it was also a witness to human ambition and the often uneasy intersection of scholarship and empire. The stone's influence in the British Museum extended beyond Egyptology. It inspired artists, linguists, and writers across Europe, becoming a symbol of human capacity to decode mystery, to illuminate the unknown, and to connect with voices from another era. Its inscriptions became a touchstone for intellectual discourse, a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is a continuum spanning nations, centuries, and cultures. Scholars debated translations, refined techniques, and considered the broader implications for understanding civilization itself. Each engagement with the stone, each study or public display, reinforced the idea that artifacts carry not just information but profound human meaning. The journey of the Rosetta Stone also underscores the complexities of preservation. Transporting and housing such a massive object required foresight, engineering, and care. Even in the museum, challenges arose. Lighting, display conditions, and public access needed to be balanced with preservation. The stone became a living case study in cultural stewardship, a reminder that history can be fragile, and that safeguarding the past requires continuous effort. Its survival, from a fort in Egypt to the halls of the British Museum, reflects both chance and deliberate human intervention. The Rosetta Stone's journey, therefore, is inseparable from its discovery, decipherment, and global impact. It is not merely an object but a narrative, a story of empires, scholarship, ambition, and human curiosity. It traveled across seas and borders, survived political upheaval, and ultimately spoke through the intellect of scholars who understood its significance. Its inscriptions, once silent, now carried multiple layers of meaning: historical, linguistic, emotional, and symbolic. Visitors and scholars alike experienced a profound sense of connection to the ancients, mediated by the stone's remarkable survival and human care. In the long term, the stone's journey has continued to provoke reflection and debate. Modern discussions about repatriation, cultural heritage, and ethical stewardship trace their roots back to this moment in history. While its removal to London enabled global scholarship and facilitated the decipherment that transformed our understanding of ancient Egypt, it also raises enduring questions. Can knowledge justify displacement? Does a nation own the past if it preserves and studies it responsibly? These questions linger, adding layers of complexity to the stone's story, and reminding us that history is never static, but a dialogue between past and present. Ultimately, the Rosetta Stone's relocation to the British Museum ensured its survival, study, and accessibility to generations of scholars and the public. Its journey became part of its identity, entwined with human stories of ambition, curiosity, and ethical contemplation. The stone's inscriptions, once confined to the sands of Egypt, were now a bridge connecting continents, epochs, and minds. In every sense, the journey itself became a chapter in the greater narrative of humanity's quest to understand, preserve, and honor its own history. The British Museum, by displaying the stone, transformed it into a universal symbol. It was no longer just a decree of Ptolemy V or a linguistic puzzle. It had become a testament to human persistence, intellect, and imagination. Visitors could stand before it and contemplate centuries of human endeavor. The soldiers who uncovered it, the scholars who deciphered it, the historians who studied it, and the artisans who had carved it millennia earlier. The stone, heavy with time, carried with it the weight of countless lives, each contributing to a narrative larger than any one individual, larger even than the nation that now held it. Through its journey, the Rosetta Stone teaches an enduring lesson. The path from discovery to understanding is rarely simple. It is shaped by curiosity, ambition, ethics, and circumstance. Yet even amid complexity and controversy, knowledge can thrive, voices can be restored, and civilizations can speak across time. The stone's journey from a sun-baked fort in Egypt to the British Museum is a testament to the human capacity to seek, preserve, and connect. A journey as remarkable as the message carved into its surface. The life of Jean-François Champollion, the man who unlocked the secrets of the Rosetta Stone, is a story of brilliance, obsession, and relentless dedication. Born in 1790 in the quiet town of Figeac in southern France, Champollion displayed extraordinary talent from a young age. By his teens, he had mastered multiple languages and displayed a fascination with the mysteries of ancient civilizations. While other children played, Champollion immersed himself in texts and manuscripts, cultivating a mind that would one day unravel the language of a civilization long thought forever silent. His passion was not mere intellectual curiosity. It was an almost spiritual calling, a drive to hear voices lost in time and to give the past a voice once more. Champollion's early career was marked by rigorous study, mentorship under renowned scholars, and an almost obsessive focus on Egyptology. He immersed himself in Coptic, the latest surviving stage of the Egyptian language, recognizing its critical connection to hieroglyphs. He studied manuscripts, inscriptions, and contemporary works, piecing together linguistic puzzles that had confounded generations. Scholars recall letters in which he described the Rosetta Stone as a key that unlocks the secrets of eternity, revealing the reverence with which he approached his work. It was not merely a puzzle to solve. It was a dialogue with the ancients, a chance to recover lives, thoughts, and aspirations thought lost forever. The breakthrough came in 1822, when Champollion announced his decipherment of hieroglyphs, revealing that the symbols combined phonetic and ideographic elements. The world of Egyptology erupted with excitement and debate. Some scholars celebrated his achievement. Others questioned his methods and conclusions. Letters reveal the tension between triumph and skepticism, a reflection of the broader human tendency to resist change even in the face of brilliance. Champollion, however, remained steadfast, driven by the certainty that the past had revealed its voice and that humanity now had the responsibility to listen carefully and respectfully. The years following his decipherment were filled with both acclaim and relentless work. Champollion traveled extensively, examining temples, tombs, and monuments across Egypt, carefully documenting inscriptions and corroborating his findings. Each journey deepened his understanding of the civilization he had devoted his life to studying. Yet his health, fragile throughout his life, began to deteriorate under the strain of travel, study, and the immense pressure of recognition. He suffered from chronic illness, yet continued to push himself, driven by a vision of fully decoding the history and culture of Egypt. Champollion's intellectual legacy extended far beyond the Rosetta Stone itself. He established rigorous methodologies for the study of hieroglyphs, combining linguistic analysis with historical and archaeological context. His approach transformed Egyptology from a field dominated by conjecture into a systematic, scholarly discipline. Students, colleagues, and successors built upon his work, traveling to Egypt, documenting inscriptions, and developing the tools that would allow generations to continue uncovering the civilization's secrets. In this sense, Champollion's true achievement was not only in deciphering a single artifact but in creating a framework for understanding an entire civilization. The emotional and personal dimensions of his life are equally compelling. Despite the accolades and recognition, Champollion remained deeply humble, often expressing that the work was not for personal glory but for the advancement of knowledge. Letters reveal a man torn between physical exhaustion and intellectual obsession, a figure who felt a profound responsibility to the ancients whose voices he had restored. His devotion to scholarship was intertwined with a sense of duty, as if he were entrusted with a sacred task, to ensure that the wisdom, artistry, and humanity of Egypt would survive beyond the mortal span of any one individual. His final years were marked by both recognition and the bittersweet realization that time was limited. He was appointed to prestigious academic positions, invited to lecture across Europe, and lauded as the father of Egyptology. Yet illness forced him to slow his work, and he faced the frustrating awareness that much remained incomplete. In 1832, at the age of 41, Champollion died, leaving behind a legacy that would outlast empires, political upheavals, and even the stones themselves. The brevity of his life stands in sharp contrast to the enduring impact of his work. The voice he helped recover continues to speak through the centuries, far beyond the span of his mortal existence. Champollion's legacy is visible not only in the field of Egyptology but also in the broader human understanding of history and civilization. By decoding hieroglyphs, he revealed the complexity, sophistication, and humanity of ancient Egypt, transforming it from myth into living history. He demonstrated that the past is accessible, but only through careful study, empathy, and dedication. His methods, grounded in observation, comparative analysis, and cultural sensitivity, remain a model for scholars working with any lost or ancient language. In essence, Champollion showed that language is a bridge across time, connecting lives separated by centuries, yet united by shared human experience. The emotional resonance of his work is profound. Champollion not only restored the written word of Egypt, he restored its people's voice, their rituals, their prayers, and their stories. The triumph of understanding was intertwined with awe, empathy, and reverence. To read hieroglyphs as Champollion did is to witness human creativity, devotion, and ambition preserved against the odds. His work reminds us that language is not merely a tool of communication but a vessel of culture, identity, and memory, capable of transcending the limitations of time and mortality. Champollion's personal story, though marked by brilliance and obsession, also serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of human life and the demands of genius. His relentless pursuit of knowledge, often at the expense of health and leisure, underscores the human cost of extraordinary achievement. Yet it is precisely this dedication, this willingness to endure personal sacrifice in the service of understanding, that allows his legacy to endure. Scholars today still study his manuscripts, letters, and notes, recognizing that the insights gained from his life extend far beyond his discoveries. The ripple effects of his work extend into modern times. Museums, universities, and research institutions around the world continue to rely on the principles he established for deciphering, contextualizing, and preserving inscriptions. Every expedition to Egypt, every translation of papyri, and every scholarly analysis of hieroglyphs is rooted in the methodologies he pioneered. Champollion's achievement serves as a reminder that intellectual breakthroughs are rarely isolated events. They are the culmination of meticulous study, persistent curiosity, and the courage to challenge the boundaries of contemporary knowledge. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of Champollion's legacy is the emotional bridge he created between past and present. By decoding the Rosetta Stone, he allowed humanity to converse with voices silenced for millennia, to understand their lives, their beliefs, and their ambitions. In doing so, he reminded the world that history is not merely a record of events, but a tapestry of human experience, emotion, and aspiration. The pharaohs, priests, scribes, and artisans of Egypt were no longer distant or unknowable. Through Champollion's work, they spoke once more, and their stories continue to inspire wonder, reflection, and awe. In the final analysis, Jean-François Champollion's life exemplifies the intersection of intellect, perseverance, and human curiosity. His contributions extend beyond the Rosetta Stone and hieroglyphs. They illuminate the profound impact that a single individual, driven by purpose and passion, can have on the collective understanding of civilization. His life, though brief, resonates through centuries, a testament to the enduring power of knowledge, the necessity of dedication, and the timeless human desire to connect with those who came before. Even after Champollion's monumental breakthrough, the Rosetta Stone did not reveal all the secrets of ancient Egypt. For every hieroglyph successfully deciphered, countless others resisted full understanding, their meanings tantalizingly out of reach. Entire texts remain fragmentary, buried beneath sand or lost to time, hinting at knowledge and stories that may never be recovered. Despite the stone's power to unlock language, the civilization it represents retains a veil of mystery, a reminder that human comprehension, no matter how advanced, is always partial, provisional, and subject to the silent forces of time. Archaeologists and Egyptologists continue to grapple with incomplete records. Tombs have collapsed, inscriptions have eroded, and papyri have crumbled into illegible fragments. Each discovery raises as many questions as it answers. Who were the lesser-known pharaohs whose names survive only in fleeting mentions? What rituals took place in temples that are now ruins? How did everyday Egyptians, artisans, farmers, and laborers experience a society dominated by divine kings and priestly hierarchies? The Rosetta Stone was a key, yes, but it was not a master key to every locked door. Many chambers of history remain closed, echoing with silence that challenges even the most patient scholars. Some mysteries arise not from loss, but from complexity. Egyptian religious thought, political maneuvering, and social customs were layered, symbolic, and context-dependent. A single symbol could carry multiple meanings, and a single phrase could operate simultaneously as law, prayer, and poetic expression. Even with phonetic translation possible, interpreting these symbols requires imagination, empathy, and historical context. Modern readers can grasp words, but understanding intention, the subtle interplay of faith, authority, and human psychology, is a far greater challenge. The Rosetta Stone provides a map, but navigating the landscape of meaning is an ongoing, intricate endeavor. Beyond the technical, there is a human mystery embedded in these texts. Hieroglyphs record names, dates, and events, but the emotional, personal dimensions often remain elusive. What fears haunted the pharaohs as they contemplated mortality and legacy? How did ordinary families grieve, celebrate, or toil under the shadow of monumental temples and imperial authority? Some inscriptions hint at love, devotion, and pride. Others at fear, rivalry, and ambition. Yet gaps remain, leaving modern observers to wonder about the intimate lives of people who otherwise seem distant, frozen in stone but yearning to be understood. Each unanswered question carries both the frustration of limitation and the thrill of possibility. The Rosetta Stone also prompts reflection on the limits of historical knowledge itself. Even with linguistic breakthroughs, interpretation is inherently subjective. Scholars must navigate biases, contextual assumptions, and incomplete data. A single translation can shift in meaning depending on perspective, cultural understanding, and contemporary knowledge. The mysteries are not only of the past. They are embedded in the act of discovery, the negotiation between observer and observed. This makes Egyptology a discipline that is simultaneously rigorous and imaginative, grounded in evidence yet animated by the human desire to reconstruct lives long vanished. Some of the most tantalizing mysteries are political. Ancient Egypt's dynastic history was fraught with intrigue, coups, and contested successions. Certain rulers left scant evidence, while others, perhaps unpopular or defeated, were intentionally erased from the historical record. Inscriptions sometimes contradict one another, reflecting propaganda, exaggeration, or selective memory. Scholars, decoding text after text, often feel as though they are piecing together a jigsaw puzzle in which pieces have been deliberately removed. The Rosetta Stone offered clarity in some areas, yet left these shadowed corridors of political intrigue unresolved, hinting at stories of ambition, betrayal, and hidden power struggles that may never be fully known. Religious practices, too, are partially enigmatic. Temples and funerary texts describe rituals in meticulous detail, yet the lived experience of worshippers, their emotions, doubts, and spiritual ecstasy, is largely inaccessible. Symbols that appear clear in one context can be ambiguous in another, suggesting beliefs layered with multiple meanings, metaphors, and esoteric knowledge. Even priests, who acted as intermediaries between gods and mortals, recorded only fragments of their understanding. The Rosetta Stone provided a linguistic key, but the spiritual and cultural universe it unlocks remains only partially illuminated, inviting awe, interpretation, and wonder. Another layer of mystery surrounds the broader context of Egyptian civilization. Monuments, cities, and agricultural systems hint at vast networks of trade, knowledge, and interaction with neighboring cultures. Yet records are incomplete. How did Egypt's economy adapt to political changes, famine, or foreign invasion? How did knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and medicine evolve, and who controlled its transmission? Each discovery answers some questions while opening others, suggesting a civilization more complex than any single stone could capture. The Rosetta Stone's decipherment is an invitation to explore this labyrinth of human endeavor. Yet the labyrinth itself is never fully mapped. The mystery is compounded by human ambition and preservation. Wars, colonization, and environmental factors have scattered Egypt's artifacts across the globe. Every object removed, every papyrus lost, increases the gaps in the historical record. Modern scholars face the dual challenge of interpreting what survives while acknowledging what will never be recovered. The Rosetta Stone, in this sense, symbolizes both revelation and limitation. A triumph of understanding, yet a constant reminder of what remains beyond reach. Its survival is miraculous, yet it also underscores the fragility of human memory and the impermanence of civilization. Despite these uncertainties, the ongoing quest to solve these mysteries is a source of wonder and excitement. Every excavation, every new translation, and every reinterpretation holds the potential to reshape understanding. Scholars continue to discover tombs, papyri, and inscriptions that expand or challenge prior knowledge. The process is iterative, a dialogue across time in which the ancient Egyptians and modern interpreters participate together. Each partial revelation is a victory, each unanswered question a provocation to curiosity. The mysteries that remain are as vital as the knowledge already gained, sustaining the fascination that has made the Rosetta Stone an enduring symbol of discovery. In the end, the remaining mysteries of Egypt, framed and illuminated by the Rosetta Stone, evoke humility. They remind humanity that history is neither fixed nor fully knowable, that every civilization is a mix of triumph, ambiguity, and enigma. They challenge modern interpreters to balance certainty with imagination, to honor evidence while embracing wonder. And perhaps most profoundly, they demonstrate that some secrets are not failures to comprehend, but invitations to explore, to reflect, and to marvel at the ingenuity, devotion, and complexity of human experience across time. Even today, the stone prompts reflection on what it means to truly know the past. It teaches that understanding is provisional, interpretation is layered, and mystery is an enduring part of the human story. Every glyph that resists translation, every fragment of text that offers partial insight, is a silent reminder of the vastness of time and the persistence of human curiosity. The Rosetta Stone, once a forgotten slab of basalt, now embodies not only knowledge but also the enduring wonder of the unknown. Through these mysteries, the legacy of the Rosetta Stone is renewed continually. It is a symbol of what has been discovered and what remains hidden, of the dialogue between past and present, and of the human drive to seek meaning across the centuries. Each unanswered question is not a failure but an invitation to continue the work of listening, interpreting, and connecting. And in that sense, the stone remains alive, a bridge between civilizations, a silent witness to both human achievement and the enduring power of the unknown. The legacy of the Rosetta Stone extends far beyond its physical presence in the British Museum. It has become the foundation for modern Egyptology and the digital resurrection of ancient civilizations. For centuries, scholars relied on painstaking fieldwork, meticulous note-taking, and comparative analysis to piece together the puzzle of Egypt's past. Today, technological advances allow for a new kind of engagement, one that combines traditional scholarship with digital innovation, creating virtual reconstructions, 3D modeling, and interactive archives that breathe life into hieroglyphs, tombs, and temples. The Rosetta Stone, once a single artifact unlocking language, has become a gateway to the full sensory and intellectual reconstruction of a civilization. Digital tools have transformed the way scholars and enthusiasts alike approach Egyptology. High-resolution imaging allows for precise examination of inscriptions that might otherwise be eroded or illegible. Laser scanning, photogrammetry, and 3D modeling enable researchers to digitally reconstruct entire tombs and monuments, offering perspectives previously impossible in the field. Scholars can examine hieroglyphs in three-dimensional space, compare them across locations, and study subtle details of carving technique and artistic style. The painstaking labor of centuries is amplified, accelerated, and expanded by technology, allowing the stone's linguistic revelations to inform broader reconstructions of Egypt's cultural and historical landscape. The Rosetta Stone itself has been digitized extensively. Scholars and museums have collaborated to create ultra-high-definition scans, enabling researchers around the globe to study its inscriptions without physical proximity. This democratization of knowledge echoes Champollion's vision, allowing the voices of ancient Egyptians to reach a wider audience than ever before. What was once the exclusive domain of elite scholars is now accessible to students, educators, and digital explorers, bridging centuries and continents through the universal language of technology. Its digital presence is a continuation of its historical journey, transcending borders while preserving its authority as a linguistic key. Virtual reconstruction has also enabled the public to experience ancient Egypt in immersive ways. Museums and educational platforms have created simulations of temples, tombs, and cityscapes based on archaeological data and inscriptions deciphered using the principles unlocked by the Rosetta Stone. Visitors can explore the tomb of Seti I, witness the grandeur of Karnak, or follow a priest's procession in a virtual temple, all while reading translations of inscriptions that bring context, meaning, and emotion to the experience. In this sense, the stone's legacy is no longer static. It is dynamic, interactive, and emotionally engaging, connecting audiences with the lived experience of ancient peoples. Digital resurrection has also accelerated research into previously undeciphered or fragmented texts. Machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence can analyze patterns in hieroglyphic inscriptions, offering new hypotheses for partial or obscure glyphs. These technologies can cross-reference vast corpora of texts, highlighting linguistic, stylistic, and thematic consistencies that would take human scholars decades to compile. While technology does not replace human interpretation, it expands the possibilities of understanding, making the Rosetta Stone not only a historical artifact but also a catalyst for cutting-edge scholarship. This technological renaissance has practical implications for preservation as well. Many Egyptian monuments face threats from environmental conditions, urban expansion, and tourism. Digital documentation preserves a record of these sites for future generations, mitigating the risk of permanent loss. The Rosetta Stone, in both physical and digital form, thus symbolizes a dual role. It is a key to the past and a tool for safeguarding heritage for the future. The principles it represents, meticulous documentation, linguistic analysis, and interdisciplinary collaboration, inform both traditional and modern approaches to preservation. The digital revival also has emotional and educational dimensions. By recreating spaces, texts, and artifacts in interactive formats, people can engage with the lives of ancient Egyptians on a personal level. Hieroglyphs cease to be abstract symbols. They are understood as the voices of humans, children, scribes, priests, rulers, whose thoughts, prayers, and ambitions echo across millennia. Students can witness, in virtual time, the creation of monumental works, the intricacies of daily life, and the rhythm of rituals that once defined society. In this way, the Rosetta Stone continues to serve its original purpose, connecting humans across time, allowing modern minds to inhabit the world of those long gone. The interdisciplinary collaboration enabled by digital technologies mirrors the collaborative spirit sparked by the decipherment. Egyptologists, linguists, historians, computer scientists, and graphic artists now work together to interpret, reconstruct, and disseminate knowledge. The lessons of Champollion's careful methodology remain relevant. Rigorous study, contextual understanding, and the application of innovative approaches yield insights that surpass individual effort. Digital tools amplify human curiosity rather than replace it, creating a dialogue between ancient text and modern imagination that would have been inconceivable in the early 19th century. Even as technology opens new horizons, the mysteries of ancient Egypt remain. The Rosetta Stone provides a foundation, but countless texts, monuments, and practices await discovery and interpretation. Digital reconstruction allows scholars to hypothesize, test, and visualize possibilities, yet every reconstruction carries uncertainty, reflecting the partial and fragmentary nature of surviving evidence. In this sense, the digital era mirrors the historical one. Knowledge expands, mysteries remain, and human engagement continues to oscillate between revelation and wonder. The stone remains a symbol of both certainty and enigma, reminding us that the pursuit of understanding is ongoing. Moreover, the Rosetta Stone's digital presence fosters global collaboration. Scholars in Cairo, Paris, London, and beyond can share data instantly, compare translations, and jointly reconstruct inscriptions with unprecedented efficiency. The artifact transcends physical boundaries, enabling a worldwide community of learners and researchers to participate in the same intellectual journey Champollion began nearly 2 centuries ago. This accessibility democratizes knowledge while reinforcing the emotional connection to the past. Humanity, collectively, is listening to voices that were once silent. Ultimately, the Rosetta Stone's role in modern Egyptology is as much symbolic as practical. It embodies the convergence of human curiosity, technological innovation, and cultural preservation. By serving as a linguistic foundation, it enables digital resurrection of entire civilizations, connecting scholars and audiences with the ancient world in ways that were previously unimaginable. Its legacy is dynamic, evolving, and global, a bridge between past and present, analog and digital, knowledge and imagination. In this way, the stone's journey continues, from a carved basalt slab discovered by chance in a fort, to the hands of Champollion, to its display in London, and now into the digital realm. It has never been static. Each era adds layers of interpretation, technology, and understanding, yet the core remains unchanged. It is a voice of humanity reaching across time, offering insight, inspiration, and wonder. The Rosetta Stone is not merely a relic. It is a living key, unlocking not only the language of the ancients but the enduring human desire to know, to connect, and to resurrect what has been lost. The Rosetta Stone, celebrated as one of the most important keys to human history, has never been free from controversy. Its presence in the British Museum is a symbol of knowledge and discovery, yet also a reminder of the complexities of conquest, colonialism, and cultural ownership. Since its removal from Egypt in the early 19th century, debates over repatriation, moral responsibility, and national pride have shadowed its scholarly and public acclaim. The stone embodies a tension between global heritage and local identity, between access to knowledge and the ethics of possession, a tension that continues to provoke reflection and debate today. When British forces claimed the Rosetta Stone as part of the spoils of war from the defeated French in 1801, it marked the beginning of its controversial status. While the British celebrated its arrival as a triumph of scholarship and national pride, Egyptian scholars and citizens recognized the removal as a loss of cultural patrimony. For them, the stone was not merely a linguistic artifact. It was a tangible connection to their own history, an emblem of civilization whose home had been displaced by imperial power. Letters, petitions, and historical records reveal the disquiet among Egyptians, a sentiment echoed in modern debates about cultural restitution. Over the centuries, the argument for repatriation has gained momentum. Advocates emphasize that artifacts like the Rosetta Stone carry deep cultural, spiritual, and historical significance for the nations from which they originated. They argue that while preservation and accessibility in foreign museums may offer benefits, the original context of artifacts is inseparable from their meaning. The stone, etched with decrees of a native king, embedded within the landscape of the Nile, temples, and fortresses, carries layers of significance that cannot be fully experienced in a foreign display case. Returning it would not only honor its origin but restore a piece of Egypt's living cultural heritage. Opponents of repatriation counter that the British Museum provides unparalleled preservation, study, and global access. They argue that the Rosetta Stone has become a symbol of shared human history, transcending national boundaries. Scholars from around the world have been able to examine, photograph, and interpret the stone precisely because it resides in London. From this perspective, the artifact belongs not solely to Egypt but to humanity, a bridge connecting cultures and generations. The debate is thus not merely about physical possession, but about the very nature of historical stewardship and intellectual accessibility. Ethical dimensions complicate the matter further. The stone was removed in the context of colonial conquest, raising questions about legitimacy and moral responsibility. Modern international law, cultural heritage protocols, and UNESCO conventions provide frameworks for evaluating such claims, yet they cannot erase the historical circumstances of removal. For some, the stone's continued presence in Britain is a reminder of imperial imbalance, a lingering emblem of power exercised over a colonized nation. These considerations add emotional and political weight to debates, making the stone more than an academic object. It is a symbol of justice, identity, and historical accountability. Public opinion plays a significant role in the controversy. Egyptians, both within the country and in the diaspora, have long expressed a desire to see the Rosetta Stone returned. Campaigns, petitions, and media coverage highlight national pride and the importance of reclaiming cultural heritage. Meanwhile, many in the global public view the stone as part of collective human achievement, accessible to all regardless of nationality. These conflicting perspectives underscore the tension between universal access and cultural ownership, a debate that touches on ethics, history, identity, and emotion simultaneously. The controversy is further complicated by the stone's status as an icon of knowledge. It is not merely a historical object. It represents the triumph of human curiosity, scholarship, and discovery. Its removal facilitated Champollion's decipherment, which, in turn, revolutionized Egyptology and human understanding of the ancient world. This historical fact raises difficult questions. Would the world have gained the same understanding if the stone had remained in Egypt, inaccessible to scholars at the time? Does the greater good of knowledge outweigh questions of origin and ownership, or does moral responsibility demand its return? These are not theoretical questions. They strike at the heart of how humanity negotiates past injustices while preserving collective heritage. Legal arguments are similarly complex. While Egypt has formally requested the return of certain artifacts, the British Museum and UK law cite historical agreements and the technical legality of acquisition at the time. International frameworks, while providing guidance, often lack enforcement mechanisms, leaving repatriation debates in the realm of diplomacy, negotiation, and moral persuasion. The Rosetta Stone is frequently cited in these discussions, serving as a focal point for larger conversations about museum ethics, historical accountability, and the responsibilities of nations holding cultural artifacts acquired during periods of conquest or colonialism. Yet, even amid controversy, the debates have positive consequences. They have encouraged dialogue between nations, scholars, and institutions, fostering international collaboration and cultural exchange. Modern Egyptologists, museum curators, and policymakers increasingly emphasize shared stewardship, joint research projects, and educational outreach. The stone has become a catalyst for ethical reflection in archaeology and museology, prompting new standards for transparency, preservation, and cooperation. Controversy, in this sense, is not merely divisive. It drives progress and fosters more inclusive approaches to cultural heritage. The emotional dimensions of the debate are powerful. For many Egyptians, the Rosetta Stone embodies pride, history, and identity. Its inscriptions are more than words. They are a link to ancestors, a tangible manifestation of achievement, governance, and artistry. Its removal, therefore, is felt as both historical loss and ongoing cultural displacement. For the international audience, the stone embodies the triumph of human understanding, the ability to bridge time and language. This duality between ownership and universal significance fuels the emotional intensity of repatriation debates, making them deeply human as well as intellectual. The controversy also intersects with broader questions of historical memory. Artifacts like the Rosetta Stone remind humanity that the past is not neutral. It is entangled with human ambition, conflict, and interpretation. Ownership of such artifacts carries symbolic weight, reflecting historical injustices, power dynamics, and cultural identity. Repatriation debates force societies to confront uncomfortable truths about colonialism, war, and appropriation, while also considering how knowledge, preservation, and education can serve humanity collectively. In this sense, the Rosetta Stone is not merely an object of study. It is a mirror reflecting the complexities of human history itself. Despite the unresolved debates, the stone continues to inspire scholarship, reflection, and awe. Its inscriptions remain a bridge to ancient voices, and its story encourages critical engagement with history, ethics, and cultural identity. Whether it remains in London or is someday returned to Egypt, the Rosetta Stone embodies both knowledge and responsibility, discovery and ethical reflection. It is a reminder that human curiosity carries consequences, and that the pursuit of understanding is inseparable from questions of justice, respect, and stewardship. Ultimately, the controversy surrounding the Rosetta Stone is a testament to its enduring significance. It is not merely an artifact of the past, but a living symbol, capable of inspiring debate, reflection, and connection across centuries. The questions it raises about ownership, ethics, preservation, and identity are as relevant today as they were 2 centuries ago. In this way, the stone continues to speak, not only through its inscriptions, but through the conversations, disputes, and reflections it provokes. Its journey is far from complete, and its story continues to shape how humanity understands itself, its history, and its responsibility to the cultures that came before. The Rosetta Stone's influence extends far beyond the halls of museums and the study of Egyptology. It resonates in art, literature, film, and popular culture, shaping how societies envision the ancient world and interpret human history. Its inscriptions, its story, and its very existence have inspired generations of artists, writers, and filmmakers to explore the allure of mystery, the triumph of intellect, and the romance of discovery. The stone has become more than a linguistic key. It is a symbol of human curiosity, a bridge between eras, and a catalyst for imagination that transcends the confines of academia. In literature, the Rosetta Stone has appeared as a motif representing the unlocking of hidden knowledge, the revelation of ancient secrets, and the thrill of intellectual conquest. Novels, both historical and fictional, often feature scholars racing against time to decipher ancient texts, echoing the drama of Champollion's breakthrough. Writers have used the stone as a metaphor for discovery itself, the idea that beneath the surface of the world, encoded messages await those patient and perceptive enough to find them. In this sense, the Rosetta Stone embodies not only the historical act of translation, but the broader human desire to uncover truth, to illuminate darkness, and to recover voices lost to time. Visual art, too, has drawn inspiration from the stone. Painters and illustrators have recreated scenes of its discovery, the fervor of Champollion at his desk, and the awe of scholars peering over the inscriptions for the first time. Its iconic shape, surface texture, and tri-script inscriptions have been rendered in both realistic and abstract styles, symbolizing the interplay between permanence and interpretation. Sculptors and designers have incorporated its form into exhibitions and installations, emphasizing its weight, its mystery, and its symbolic resonance as a vessel of human knowledge. The stone is not merely an object in these works. It becomes a character, a silent witness to history, intellect, and human aspiration. Cinema and documentary filmmaking have amplified the stone's cultural impact. Documentaries recounting Egypt's ancient civilization often begin with the Rosetta Stone, framing it as the key to understanding a lost world. Historical dramas, adventure films, and educational programs depict the stone as a treasure of intellect, inspiring suspense, awe, and curiosity. Through film, audiences encounter the moment of its discovery, the thrill of its translation, and the intellectual drama surrounding Champollion and his contemporaries. Its story translates effortlessly into narrative, combining mystery, ambition, and revelation, elements that resonate universally, drawing viewers into both the ancient past and the human drama of discovery. The stone has also influenced popular media, appearing in novels, video games, and even comic books. Its tri-script nature, its symbolic power, and its historical weight make it a compelling plot device. A key to hidden knowledge, a puzzle to be solved, a relic that connects past and present. Game designers create interactive experiences in which players decipher symbols, uncover secrets, and explore virtual reconstructions of ancient Egypt, all inspired by the stone's historical significance. Through these platforms, the Rosetta Stone educates and entertains, bridging historical scholarship with contemporary storytelling and technology. Music and performance art have, in subtler ways, responded to the stone's resonance. Composers and performers have drawn inspiration from its symbolic weight, creating works that evoke mystery, discovery, and the passage of time. Its story, a triumph of intellect against silence and obscurity, provides an emotional and conceptual framework, allowing artists to explore themes of communication, memory, and the persistence of human culture. The stone's influence, therefore, is not limited to visual or textual media. It permeates broader cultural consciousness, inspiring reflection on human creativity, ingenuity, and perseverance. Educational media has also been transformed by the stone's legacy. It appears in textbooks, interactive exhibits, and virtual learning platforms, where it serves as both subject and symbol. Teachers use it to illustrate the power of language, the importance of meticulous scholarship, and the connections between history, linguistics, and culture. Its story of discovery, decipherment, and ongoing scholarship becomes a narrative tool, conveying lessons about curiosity, perseverance, and the ethical dimensions of knowledge. In classrooms and online platforms alike, the Rosetta Stone bridges centuries, bringing ancient Egypt into direct dialogue with modern learners. The stone's cultural impact is amplified by its symbolic narrative, a silent artifact that speaks across time, discovered amid conflict, and deciphered through genius and persistence. It embodies the human drive to uncover hidden truths, to translate the unfamiliar into understanding, and to connect with those who lived millennia before. This narrative resonates universally because it mirrors the essence of human experience: the struggle to comprehend, the thrill of insight, and the moral and intellectual responsibility that comes with knowledge. Its story is dramatic, cinematic, and emotionally compelling, making it an ideal vehicle for artistic and cultural expression. The visual and symbolic qualities of the Rosetta Stone also lend themselves to metaphoric interpretations. Its tri-script inscriptions are often seen as emblematic of diversity, unity, and the power of translation across cultural and temporal divides. Artists, writers, and educators draw on this symbolism to explore broader themes: communication, understanding across difference, and the interplay of memory, identity, and history. The stone becomes not only a historical artifact but a philosophical and ethical touchstone, a way to reflect on humanity's capacity for connection and comprehension. This presence in media also sparks reflection on the ethics of discovery and display. Films, novels, and exhibitions often highlight the debates surrounding the stone's removal from Egypt, prompting audiences to consider questions of cultural heritage, stewardship, and historical justice. The stone thus operates on multiple levels: as an educational tool, a narrative device, a cultural symbol, and a mirror reflecting ongoing conversations about history, power, and responsibility. Its story is simultaneously ancient and contemporary, local and global, material and metaphorical. The Rosetta Stone's cultural reverberations underscore the enduring power of artifacts to inspire beyond their immediate historical function. While it was created as a decree, its meaning has evolved dramatically over 2 millennia. Today, it inspires awe in museums, curiosity in classrooms, imagination in art, and reflection in public discourse. Its journey, from Egyptian fortresses to the British Museum, from Champollion's desk to virtual reconstructions, illustrates how an object can transcend its physical form to become a symbol of human ingenuity, aspiration, and connectivity. Ultimately, The Rosetta Stone's impact on art and media highlights the deep human need to engage with the past, to narrate its mysteries, and to translate its lessons into contemporary experience. It reminds us that artifacts are never static. They live through interpretation, through performance, through storytelling, and through reflection. Every depiction, every translation, and every virtual reconstruction is a continuation of the dialogue the stone began, connecting artists, audiences, and scholars with voices long silenced but never forgotten. Its cultural resonance, like the inscriptions themselves, is layered, enduring, and alive, a testament to the profound ways in which history, discovery, and imagination intertwine. The Rosetta Stone stands as more than a relic of history. It is a mirror reflecting humanity's most defining trait, curiosity. From the moment it was unearthed from the Egyptian sands, it has symbolized the hunger to know, to understand, and to give voice to the silent. That stone, etched over 2,000 years ago with decrees meant to glorify a pharaoh, became a testament not to royal power but to the enduring quest of the human mind. It is the embodiment of our refusal to accept mystery as final, our insistence that even the deepest silence can be made to speak. Curiosity is what drove soldiers, scholars, and explorers to look closer, to wonder why 3 scripts adorned the same slab of stone. It is what led Thomas Young to suspect connections between hieroglyphs and phonetics, and what pushed Champollion to spend years risking his health and reputation to prove that suspicion right. Each letter deciphered, each symbol understood, was a small victory for human curiosity, a spark of understanding in a long night of uncertainty. And when those sparks joined together, they illuminated the vast, intricate tapestry of ancient Egyptian civilization that had remained dark for centuries. But curiosity is not just about knowledge, it is about connection. Through the Rosetta Stone, humanity connected across millennia with voices that had been silent since the last temple closed and the last hieroglyph was written. Those who carved the original decree could never have imagined that people from distant lands, in distant centuries, would one day read their words and understand their world. The stone became a bridge, a channel through which human thought crossed time itself. It reminds us that curiosity is not only the pursuit of facts. It is an act of empathy, an effort to reach across the boundaries of death and time to listen, to understand, and to remember. Its discovery and decipherment also reveal the paradox of curiosity, that it both unites and divides. Curiosity drew nations into competition, as Britain and France vied for control over Egypt's artifacts. It drove ambition, pride, and rivalry as fiercely as it inspired learning. The same curiosity that unlocks knowledge can also provoke conflict, showing that human desire to know is as powerful as it is perilous. The Rosetta Stone thus becomes a reminder that curiosity must be tempered with humility, that the pursuit of truth carries with it the weight of responsibility. In museums, where visitors gaze upon the Rosetta Stone behind protective glass, curiosity continues to radiate from it. People lean in, tracing the unfamiliar scripts with their eyes, feeling the pull of an ancient enigma, even though its secret has long been revealed. The stone invites not just observation, but participation, a momentary step into the continuum of discovery. It teaches that knowledge is not a fixed achievement but a living process, renewed each time a curious mind asks, "What does this mean?" Or "Who were they?" The Rosetta Stone also stands as a symbol of collaboration, another face of curiosity. It took many minds, across borders and generations, to unlock its secret. Curiosity, in this sense, becomes communal, a shared effort that transcends ego, nation, and time. The decipherment of hieroglyphs was not the triumph of one man but of a collective human impulse to understand. That impulse connects us all. Scholars and students, artists and dreamers, ancient scribes and modern thinkers. It tells us that curiosity is a kind of inheritance, passed from one era to another like a torch that must never be extinguished. And yet, perhaps the greatest mystery the Rosetta Stone reveals is that curiosity itself is endless. Even after hieroglyphs were deciphered, questions continued to multiply about Egypt's religion, its art, its worldview. Each answer opened new mysteries. Each discovery deepened the wonder. The stone's legacy, then, is not closure but continuation. It shows that curiosity is not satisfied by revelation. It thrives on the horizon of what remains unknown. When we stand before the Rosetta Stone today, we are not just looking at an artifact, we are looking into a reflection of ourselves. Its surface bears not only the marks of chisels but the imprints of every mind that has ever wondered, questioned, or dreamed. It is a silent reminder that curiosity is the heartbeat of civilization, that without it, knowledge stagnates, and history falls silent once more. In the end, the Rosetta Stone teaches us that to be human is to be endlessly curious, to keep listening for the voices buried in the sands of time, and to believe that, somehow, they can still speak to us. Even after the Rosetta Stone unlocked the voice of ancient Egypt, humanity's quest for knowledge did not end. It only deepened. The decipherment of hieroglyphs opened doors to countless other mysteries buried in deserts, temples, and forgotten tombs. Each discovery, a fragment of papyrus, a shattered statue, a hidden inscription, hinted at an even greater story waiting to be told. Scholars and archaeologists now work with satellites, DNA analysis, and digital imaging. Yet the heart of their mission remains the same as Champollion's: to understand, to translate, to listen. The Rosetta Stone became a symbol of what relentless curiosity can achieve, and a reminder that our understanding of the past is never complete. Every clue recovered from the sands of Egypt brings us closer to the truth, yet also reminds us how vast the unknown still is. The pursuit of ancient knowledge is not merely about history, it is about identity. For in searching the echoes of lost civilizations, humanity continues its oldest endeavor: to understand who we are, where we came from, and what secrets still lie hidden beneath the weight of time. The Rosetta Stone teaches that knowledge is both fragile and enduring, a gift passed through time to those willing to seek, question, and understand. It reminds us that discovery requires patience, humility, and respect for what came before. Its story urges future generations to protect history, to listen to the silent voices of the past, and to continue the pursuit of truth. Just as the stone once bridged forgotten worlds, it now calls us to preserve curiosity itself, the most powerful force that connects humanity across ages, cultures, and the unending passage of time. The Rosetta Stone stands as a silent witness to humanity's greatest gift, the desire to understand. From its discovery in the sands of Egypt to its enshrinement in modern consciousness, it bridges millennia, connecting ancient minds with our own. It reminds us that knowledge is fragile yet eternal, that curiosity transcends borders, and that truth, once revealed, transforms how we see ourselves. In its carved symbols lies the story of human persistence, imagination, and hope, a message whispering across time, that even in silence, the past speaks, and it is our duty to listen.